production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the Cary Town Council meeting of September 26th. And at this time, I'm going to recognize Council Member Frantz for our ceremonial opening. Mr. Frantz.
Thank you, Mayor. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're at agenda item A3, adoption of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion, second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That moves us to item B. It's the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. For the benefit of people watching the meeting on TV, we're going to take a moment to read our consent agenda items. Please keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. First item, approval of the minutes. Next item, adoption of a resolution supporting the Wake County Public School System's grant proposal. And the third item, adopting amendments to the Land Development Ordinance and the associated Comprehensive Plan Consistency Statement. Mr. Frantz will now summarize the Planning and Development Committee consent agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning and Development Committee met on September 19th of this month, and we had 3 items that are on the consent agenda. First of which is the Round 27 LDO amendments. We unanimously recommended setting a public hearing for October 24th. Item B was request for a water line extension to the Rex Fraser subdivision. And item C, comprehensive transportation plan amendment, Bamberg Lane, Orchard Knoll Drive, and Lawdraker Drive.
Thank you. Mr. Frantz and Mrs. Adcock have requested to pull item B1B from the consent agenda. This is our resolution supporting the school system's grant proposal. We'll discuss this item as part of our old and new business portion of the agenda. Would council members like any other items pulled from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This takes us to item C1. Mr. Frantz will now present the proclamation recognizing Fire Prevention Week. Mr. Frantz.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Ms. Kathy Ellis of the Fire Department to please join me at the podium.
As I'm sure all of us here are aware, Ms. Ellis is the fire education specialist for the Town of Cary's Fire Department. One of her responsibilities is educating our citizens on fire prevention and safety. She does a fantastic job at it. We're here tonight to recognize 1 week in October as Fire Prevention Week, and we're grateful for everything that you do to focus on educating our citizens and businesses about fire prevention safety. It's really nice to hear that we don't have many fires in town, and there's a big, your department and your efforts are a big reason why, so thank you very much. But I'd like to read this proclamation and then present it to you, and then ask you to make any comments afterwards if you like.
Thank you.
This is from the Office of the Mayor, recognizing October 6th October 6th through the 12th in 2013 as Fire Prevention Week in Cary. Whereas the Town of Cary Fire Department is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Cary. Whereas, according to 2011 statistics from the National Fire Protection Association, in the United States, that year alone, home fires killed more than 2,500 people, and fire departments responded to more than 370,000 home fires. Whereas the 2013 Fire Prevention Week theme, Prevent Kitchen Fires, is a reminder for all of us to use caution when cooking to reduce the risks of kitchen fires. Whereas in the United States, 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen. It's not us guys cooking, though, I promise. Between 2007 and 11, fire departments annually responded to an average of 156,000 cooking fires. Unattended equipment was a key factor in 1/3 of those fires, and in 50% of these cases, injuries occurred because the victims tried to fight the fires themselves. Children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking. Whereas the Town of Cary firefighters are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention education, in keeping with the 2013 Fire Prevention Week theme, Cary Fire Department staff urges residents to stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around your cooking area, and keep anything that can catch fire away from the stovetop. Now therefore, I, Don Frantz, on behalf of Harold Weinbrecht Jr., Mayor of the Town of Cary, and on behalf of the entire Cary Town Council, do hereby proclaim October 6th through 12th, 2013 as Fire Prevention Week in the Town of Cary, and I urge all citizens to check their kitchens immediately, take steps to eliminate cooking fire hazards, and implement safe cooking practices. Furthermore, I urge Cary citizens to participate in and support the many public safety activities and efforts of the town's fire department. Proclaim this 26th day of September 2013.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On behalf of Chief Kane and the entire Cary Fire Department, I accept this graciously. Also, we want to say we work very hard throughout the year to promote fire prevention, not just during Fire Prevention Week and during the month of October. We think our efforts are apparent in that our fire loss has declined over the years, and we think we in part have something to do with that. We also want to invite you out to our safety event on Saturday, October the 5th. We're going to have our Kids Combat Challenge, and other agencies are going to join us in promoting safety. During this month, we're going to encourage people to be careful in the kitchen, and hopefully we can prevent some of these cooking fires. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis, and for all the things you do. Like Mr. Frantz said, you're the face of education and fire prevention here in Cary, and we appreciate all you've done over the years and what you're going to do in the future years.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate your support because we know we can't do it without you. So thank you very much.
We now move to our second item. Mr. Shiver will now present the manager's operational update. Mr. Shiver.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening I would like to mention 4 items. The first of these is a significant improvement in emergency operations for Cary and Wake County. And on Monday, September the 9th, the Wake County Board of Commissioners directed county staff to move forward with developing an interlocal agreement to partner with the town's radio system. This partnership will greatly enhance the joint provision of public safety services for both Cary and Wake County citizens. It provides for a totally seamless interoperability of our communications services, and also allows for better collaboration and cooperation when multiple agencies are required to respond to incidents. Partnership will also result in a cost savings for both Cary and Wake County due to the sharing of annual operation and maintenance fees and future upgrade costs to the system. Each agency will continue to provide their services independently while achieving a seamless joint response when needed. Town staff will be bringing the agreement to effect this change and this cooperation with the county to the council for approval through a future operations committee agenda item. So this is very significant in my opinion, and I really do want to point out to the council that this is a great example of where we have worked traditionally, and we do so today with Wake County and our other partners in the county at trying to achieve better service at lower cost for all of our citizens. Second item is I'd like to mention is that Ted Boyd, the downtown manager, who was recently hired, begins work this Monday, and he'll hit the ground running with a full calendar. You can be assured of that, including meeting with the Heart of Cary and probably taking quite a bit of time to meet with individuals both downtown and throughout the community. So we're looking forward to having him on board and leading the team to continue our successful downtown revitalization efforts. We also will have time where Ted will meet with each of the council members, so each of you can share perspectives and backgrounds on downtown revitalization. The third item, would like to mention that there was a very successful public information session held Tuesday night where we shared the downtown park and streetscape concept drawings that the council has already seen. We've taken that to the public. We had over 100 or around 100 people attending the session, and I think staff has characterized it as the overall feeling seemed to be very positive. So we were very pleased with that. And I think it kind of reflects what council has seen and approved as we move forward. So I think that's very good for our project. The next step will be with those projects is an October 17th work session with the council where we'll talk more in depth about the features of each of those projects, including the public art component. So that is an open work session, and the public is invited to attend that. And finally, I would like to end on it is a sad note, but it's the last thing I will mention this evening. A longtime staff member of our public works staff, Bob Bilodeau, passed away since our last meeting. I think council is aware of this and has seen emails about this. Bob was a tremendous asset to the town, a long-term staff member. He did great work for us. He will be very much missed, and our thoughts will continue to be with his wife, Linda, and their whole family. And that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Shiver. We're now going to move to item D, as Public Speaks Out. Item D and E, public hearings, have included instructions for speaking at these forums on the printed agenda. If you'd like to speak, please take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have up to 3 minutes for each of their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic as long as it's not a public hearing for this evening. We have public hearings listed on the PowerPoint slide. Thanks for holding those comments until we get to the public hearings. We have a 3-minute time limit, which I'll strictly enforce to be fair to all of our speakers. There's a timer located on the podium, and it will be green for the first 2.5 minutes and yellow for the last 30 seconds. And after 3 minutes, it will be a flashing red, and at that time, I'll immediately interrupt you and ask you to conclude your comments. I thank all of our speakers in advance for adhering to our guidelines. I also would like everyone in the audience to please respect this business meeting by not applauding or making remarks from your seat or anything else that distracts from the meeting. I'll now open the Public Speaks Out for our first speaker who wants to speak on any issue that is not a public hearing, and invite the first speaker forward at this time.
Good evening. Thank you once more for an opportunity to address the honored members of the Cary Town Council. And I want to thank you for having at least allowed an investigation of the petition my neighbors and I submitted.
Could you give us your name, please?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. My name is Robert Hyman.
Thank you.
And I'm in a planning area, sort of kind of within District C. And referring back to a previous meeting, I thank you for having at least entertained the petition and asked the planning staff to investigate the petition to address a problem we had with collector streets. I also want to thank the planning staff for its good investigation and Cary's town attorney for her contribution to it. I gather from it, in Todd Delk's words, that we are in fact entitled as homeowners in an area that would have to be in fact annexed and either majorly redeveloped or rezoned in order for the collector roads to ever be built. We appreciate that, and we appreciate understanding our rights better. But I do hope that the planning staff follows its own recommendation, which it originally gave, not just to reject the request, but then to consider it along with its consideration of all the other collector streets in the upcoming transportation plan, now under development, now under discussion through the community. With that, I would ask that the following policies, the following measures for good communication be adhered to. I spoke with Todd Delk about that before the Planning and Building Committee Development Committee met. He seemed to agree, let's pursue it. With the understanding that nobody was ever notified of any of these collector streets in our planning area. We had to find out about it for ourselves and were duly alarmed. We could avoid all of this with better communication. Point one. You've got 24 such collector streets, of which we were a couple of them, okay? Send the homeowners at their addresses a simple letter essentially summarizing the planning staff's report, which is that our property rights are in no way affected unless we're rezoned and there is major redevelopment or rezoning that would all go together. We can then keep those letters. We can put them in our safe deposit boxes. If we want to sell our houses, we can show those we can give a copy to our real estate agent. We can pass it to the next owner. We can refer to it if we want to make improvements on our homes or our streets which may need repair. Ours is a private street.
Mr. Hyman, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Okay.
If you have additional comments, if you could give those to the clerk, she'll make sure that we get them.
One more point in finishing the request.
I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to do that. I have to be fair to all of our speakers. Thank you, sir.
Color code those streets and give an explanation in the
Thank
plan.
you, sir. Next speaker, please. Go ahead.
Oh, excuse me, okay. Hello, my name is Dan Hayes. Live in Winston Ridge subdivision. And thank you, Mayor, and the council members for your attention and time this evening, and thank you for Cary Speaks. I want to start out with a short scenario. And this is regarding the town street lighting policy change that was voted in on August the 8th by the council. Knock, knock. Who's there? It's Duke Progress Energy. I'm here to install your new street light. What are you talking about? That's the real scenario that can happen under the new policy. And it's not a joke, as you might imagine. And in fact, it would have been the scenario in my case, since the homeowners of my neighborhood, in fact, were presenting the case that caused the policy change presented in the staff report that resulted in voting in that policy change. And it was just a single street light on my lot. All that activity was not known to me or other homeowners, at least affected homeowners, and none of the minutes of the actions of the board reflected any of that. So I just happened to, by accident, learn about it, which is why I'm here today. First of all, the policy. It was presented in the staff report as a minor change It is anything but that. My scenario hopefully would point that out to you. The existing longstanding policy would inform homeowners, in fact, get their agreement to such light being installed. That's not what I call minor. In fact, the new policy nullifies the longstanding first option for approval by affected homeowners. In fact, we spoke with Tim Bailey, the head of the engineering department, met with him about it, and his interpretation of the new policy is the new option, in fact, can be executed with no regard for the longstanding original policy. So that, to me, presents a huge problem and a huge change, not minor. So I would like to present some suggestions for improving the situation. Clarify in the new option that it could be executed only after your long-standing policy has been executed properly. That is, giving homeowners the say for the installation of the lights. We have presented, the affected homeowners, my neighbor and I, who will speak in a moment, have presented what we call a win-win-win proposal to address many of the issues surrounding the new policy, and I will provide that to you. We'd ask that you suspend such policy until
Mr.
you
Hayes,
have a complete solution.
I'm sorry, your time has expired. I'm assuming we have your comment?
Yes, and or Don's.
Okay.
They're all on the same topic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for your time. I'm going to go very fast. Again, I'm batting cleanup now for
State your name, please.
Oh, Don Williams from Winston Ridge Subdivision, 7003 Spring Ridge. We are working, going to talk about the street lighting policy. Clearly, we're going to talk about this dark spot on Spring Ridge Road that caused the town of Cary to change their complete street lighting policy. So for one little dark spot on the town of Cary, I've mentioned on the map here, I'm going to show you briefly. A little scenario helps you. These are the lights that currently we have on Spring Ridge Road. We're proposing a new light in between those two lights. So for that proposal, we'd have a street light for every 2 houses on our subdivision. So we'd really light up the subdivision, to say the least. Also, the process, so for 22 years, that little dark spot on Spring Ridge Road has not been a problem. No muggings, no accidents. So we're not sure why that dark spot on Spring Ridge Road changed the whole town of Cary street lighting policy. So why did your old policy work? Okay, there's really some good things. It protected the homeowners' rights. If you didn't get agreement from the homeowners, you didn't install the light. Simple policy. No agreement, no light. Town of Cary stayed out of disputes. Great thing, right? Now you've gone to an exception policy. The exception policy puts the town of Cary right into neighborhood disputes, right into petitions that will be challenged. You will now have, in our case, Winston Ridge, we were totally aware of a light coming into our area. 5 or 6 neighbors unaware. We found out kind of backdoor through an email that there's a light coming in. Well, why weren't we told? Well, you don't have to be told with the exception policy. You just get a 70% petition signed, and you don't have to be told. So you've really kind of ran over the due process for homeowners with that process. Now, I think, town of Cary is very busy. That minor modification might have slipped through the cracks. So I want to tell you some more about it. Now, for Winston Ridge, this has really caused our neighborhood to kind of be at war. All of a sudden, because of infighting, who wants a light, who doesn't want a light. And we're the first neighborhood. We're the first test case. You have hundreds of neighborhoods that have the same situation. They want street lights. Neighbors don't want them. They'll do petitions. They'll come to the town of Cary, Department of Engineering. Petitions will be refuted. In fact, I'll show you the petition that went around in our neighborhood. That's that handout I gave you all. It has some signatures, some yeses and some nos on the first page. No dates of signatures, by the way. No dates. The purpose is just ridiculous. And then on the second page, there's a maybe, and then the rest of it says these were electronically signed. So is that a valid petition?
Mr.
We don't
Williams,
think so.
I'm sorry, your time has expired. If we don't have your complete comments, please leave them with the town clerk.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is David Dwiggins. I'd like to speak in regards to rezoning case 13-08 at Fairview Village on 1010 Road, on which the council is scheduled to act at the October 10th meeting. I live at 6501 Orchard Knoll Drive, Apex. My property is one of the two county properties starting adjacent to the rezoning site and just to the east along the south side of 1010. My neighbor and I have emailed each of you two requests, a very lengthy sort of email. We first request that 1308 be modified to specify 5-foot sidewalks instead of 10-foot sidewalks. We separately request that the necessary steps be taken as soon as possible to ensure that 5-foot sidewalks will be specified along 1010 next to our properties if it should ever become necessary to build sidewalks there. It is logical to consider the two in tandem as far as is possible by process, so that we don't wind up with a situation with 5-foot sidewalks at the site and then allow 10-foot sidewalks later at the properties. We have, like I say, we've supplied you with detailed support for our request, a wide range of items, so I won't go into those tonight. Tonight, I'd like to briefly describe the impact of an eventual 10-foot sidewalk at my property. And, Mr. Schwint, my neighbor, is not here, but it's more or less the same situation for him, and we co-sponsored the request. Due to a required sidewalk easement for a 10-foot sidewalk and an existing 25-foot sewer easement in our yard, it resulted from the town's Swift Creek parallel force main project on my 3/4-acre lot. My currently spacious and open side yard with a sizable planted buffer anchored by 60-foot cedar trees located on the order of 80 to 90 feet from my house would be completely bisected, since large trees and associated plants would have to be located as close as 40 to 45 feet from the house in order to clear the sewer easement, isolating the large outer half of the yard and most likely making a two-buffer situation necessary, one halfway through the yard and one out by the property. That serious loss of functionality and appearance, plus two essentially side-by-side easements, is a lot to pile on a property, I think. Certainly we won't enjoy it as much, and I'm certain neither would prospective buyers. So I'd like to thank you in advance for considering the details of our case. Look forward to communicating by email or whatever necessary if you agree necessary, so we can hopefully reach, I think, a favorable outcome on October 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name's Len Neiman and I ride C-Tran. Unless it's rescheduled on October 10th, there will be a public hearing regarding a proposed fare increase on C-Tran. And in addition to myself, for a change, there will be other C-Tran riders there, but only because C-Tran got special permission to extend their operating hours so that people could get here and get home again afterwards. And personally, I think that's something the town of Cary should be ashamed of. Not that C-Tran riders will be here, but that it took a special exception to C-Tran's operating hours for them to do so. For too long, C-Tran's operating hours have shut riders who work, pay taxes, and vote out of participating in the town of Cary's government. For too long, they have been unable to attend council, board, and committee meetings where decisions directly affecting their lives and livelihoods are made because of C-Tran's operating hours. At the 12 September meeting here, I pointed out a potential funding source for being able to improve C-Tran's service. In the past, I've also pointed out study after study that shows transit generally has a $3 for every dollar invested return on investment. I can think of a lot of projects that have been done in Cary that don't even come close to that. So, and I believe that return will be on improved job opportunities, improved access to shopping and entertainment venues, such as the Cary Arts Center, for its riders, and that return would most likely be within 5 years, not 10. So once again, I ask the town to make the investment and turn C-Tran into a system other communities look at to see how it's done right, and in the process, let C-Tran's riders become full participants in the town's government and not just observers. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Sylvia Blankenship, and I live in the Surrey Point subdivision, which is affected by the Bamberg Collector Road that you heard about a little bit earlier in the evening. I reviewed the staff report that was online, and we got something in the mail in our neighborhood about the new 540 project, or the resumption of that project. And I went back in this whole thing and asked the central question, who's going to use this collector road that's going to connect into Bamberg? And I've lived there a long time and watched traffic flow. And I think that you need to go back before you spend your resources to build this road and look at who would really use it. Because if you're people coming west are going to go down Holly Springs Road to the large 540 intersection there. People coming east might use it, but they have the option of going to West Lake. And I think you're actually looking at a very small population of people. And when you look at the engineering that's going to be required to cross those ravines and bridges, I just question, I don't know what kind of statistics they have to have before they decide to build a road. But for this particular one, I would go back and look again, because I'm not sure it's really a good use of your resources with the entry points coming into the new 540. And I just wanted to say something, because I just know that resources for everybody are scarce, and I just think in this particular case, after really looking in the traffic and living there a long time, I'm not at all sure it's worth your resources to build in that particular collector road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker for Public Speaks Out. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out before we move to public hearings? I see no one. Will close Public Speaks Out and we'll move to public hearings. We're now at item E1, our first public hearing, to consider amending the town code to add an alternate member to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Our town clerk, Sue Rowland, will present this item, and after the public hearing, we may take action. Also, if council adopts the code amendment, we may also take action to appoint John Woodliff to this new alternate position. Ms. Rowland.
Good evening, Council. During your recent boards and commissions appointment process, Council Member Smith recommended adding a second alternate position to the Zoning Board of Adjustment due to their increasing workload. In response to his recommendation, you voted to conduct a public hearing this evening to amend the town code to add that alternate position. After you conduct the public hearing, you may vote on the ordinance amendment, and if you approve it, then Mr. Smith recommends, as the mayor said, appointing Mr. Woodliff to that position with an effective date of October 1. And I'm happy to answer any questions following the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Rowland. This time I'll open up the public hearing for amending the town code to add an alternate member, and I would invite the first speaker to the podium. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions, comments, or motion.
How about Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
No, as we discussed during the work session, that board is becoming more and more critical, and it's really, some of the cases get continued, and it's really important to have backup. So with that in mind and not hearing any objections during the public hearing, I make a motion that we approve this code amendment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Would you like to make a motion to the appointment?
Yes, and since approved, I make a motion that we appoint John Woodliff to this additional alternate position, the term expiring 9/30/2015.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Rowland.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith. We're now at item E2, our public hearings on annexations 13A15, 13A16, and 13A18. I have Mr. Nicholas of our staff, but that's definitely not Mr. Nicholas. Ms. Grannon will present all three annexation requests, and then we're going to open up a public hearing for anyone who wants to speak on any of these annexations. And after the public hearing, the council may take action on 13A15 and 13A18. We will not take action on 13A16 tonight. That will be at a future agenda. Ms. Grant.
Thank you. Good evening. The first petition before you this evening is a request for annexation of approximately 5 acres located at 1540 Wilson Road. The site is approximately 2,100 feet northeast of the intersection of Northwest Cary Parkway and Chapel Hill Road. The property is located inside Cary's ETJ and is zoned transitional residential conditional use. The request is associated with a subdivision plan, Plan Number 13 SB 009, known as the Wilson Place subdivision, which is a proposed development of 11 lots in Cary. This is part of a larger subdivision plan which includes lots that are also located in Morrisville. The next petition, 13A16, is a request for annexation of approximately 58.9 acres located at Green Hope School Road, south of the intersection with Twyla Road. The request also includes 13.7 acres of adjacent right-of-way. The property is located in Cary's ETJ and is zoned R12 conditional use, transitional residential, and residential 40. The request is associated with subdivision plan 13 SB 007, which is known as the Green Hope Crossing subdivision, and that proposes a development of 174 townhomes and 10 detached dwelling lots. And as you stated, the applicant has requested that council defer action on this particular petition so that determination can be made at the time a future quasi-judicial site plan is presented to you. The third petition for annexation is for case 13A18, which is a request for annexation of 4.21 acres located at O'Kelly Chapel Road, northeast of the intersection with Alston Avenue. The request includes approximately 0.7 acres of adjacent right-of-way. The property is in Cary's ETJ, is zoned residential 40 within a mixed-use overlay district, and the request is associated with a site plan, Plan Number 13 SP 035, which is a proposed development of a daycare facility. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'll be available for any questions following the public hearing.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing on these 3 annexations and would invite the first speaker to the podium at this time. Anyone to speak on these annexations? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council discussion or a motion, and I'll remind you that 13A16 will be at a future agenda.
Make a motion to approve 13A15 and 13A18.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Grannon.
Okay.
We now move to item E3. It's a public hearing on the federal property at Copperleaf, including annexation and rezoning. Ms. Grannon will once again present the staff report, and we'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll open the public hearing for anyone who would like to speak about the annexation or the rezoning. Council will not take action on these items tonight. Instead, we'll refer them to the rezoning, to our Planning and Zoning Board. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. This is a request for initial zoning to approximately 4.15 acres located north of Fersen Road. And this includes a request from the property owners for annexation, annexation petition 13A19. The vicinity map shows the subject property highlighted in yellow. It is a landlocked parcel with no frontage on any public roads. It's approximately 500 feet north of Fersen Road and approximately 1,160 feet northwest of the intersection of Green Hope School Road and Morrisville Parkway. A zoomed-in view shows the existing conditions on the subject property. It's vacant and wooded. There have been some changes and quite a bit of clearing here with the property to the southeast of the property. This is where the Copperleaf Reserve subdivision is currently undergoing development. Cary's land use plan designates the property for very low density residential. The property is also within the Conservation Residential Overlay District. The existing zoning is Wake County Residential 40, and the proposed zoning is a Cary designation of Residential 40, and the applicant has asked to be within the Conservation Residential Overlay District with a classification for very low density residential, and within the Watershed Protection Overlay District, the Jordan Lake Subdistrict. As a point of reference, this is the Copperleaf Reserve subdivision site plan, which has been approved, which is immediately adjacent to this property. The request at this time is for this property to become part of this development plan. Property owners within 400 feet of the property were notified by mail of the rezoning application. The property itself was not posted. Staff posted the property right up here at Fersen Road so that it could be visible to adjacent property owners. Didn't really see too much point in posting it off the road, but we have not received any protest petitions because it's outside the ETJ. It was not eligible for a protest petition. We did hear from one adjacent property owner just inquiring about the process and what the development plan was proposing. And as I just stated, just one call from an adjacent property owner. The site, according to Cary's GIS maps, is impacted by a stream buffer. However, field determination is required at the time of site plan review. And Morrisville Parkway is designated as a major thoroughfare. Fersen Road is a local road. Cary's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan shows a proposed greenway trail in the vicinity of the subject property. And at this time, I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and present their comments.
Thank you. If the applicant would come forward at this time. If the applicant is here.
Seeing no applicant.
Seeing no applicant. Oh, here comes someone.
I'm not yet.
Okay.
Are you speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Sure.
Okay. This one up here.
Hi, my name is Doug Jacobs, and I represent Mr. and Mrs. Farrell. And really just would like to say that we would appreciate fair consideration. The piece is adjacent to the Copperleaf Reserve subdivision, as Mrs. Grant has noted. And therefore, that is kind of the impetus of why we are here tonight. And so that's it. Mr. and Mrs. Farrell could not be here, and so have asked me to come on their behalf.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This time, Ms. Grannon, if you're done, I'll open the public hearing.
This concludes staff's presentation. We're available after the public hearing if you have any questions.
Very good. This time, I'll open up the public hearing on this request and invite the first speaker to the podium. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? See no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for comments or questions.
My only comment would be I'm glad to see single-family homes instead of townhomes or apartments.
I know. Welcome. Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, we'll forward this to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. We now move to item E4, it's the State Employees Credit Union rezoning public hearing. Ms. Grannon will once again present the staff report. We're going to hear from the applicant. We're going to open up the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak about this rezoning. Council will not take action on this tonight. Instead, we're going to refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. This is a request that was submitted by the State Employees Credit Union and two adjacent property owners for property located at 2727 Walnut Street and two adjacent residential parcels. The overall land area, 4.46 acres. Vicinity map shows the subject property highlighted in yellow, situated between Walnut Street and Macedonia Road. And a zoomed-in aerial view shows that the parcel being considered by the State Employees Credit Union is currently vacant, and then there are two residential lots also being presented to you tonight. Cary's land use plan designation identifies the property as being located within the Southwest Area Plan with a designation as office and institutional and commercial, with a plan note that commercial use be limited to a maximum of 40% of the total floor area. The existing zoning is residential 40. The property is located within the Swift Creek Neighborhood Mixed Use Overlay District. In 2008, there were two mixed-use sketch plan options approved for this property. This first option A shows a 4,000 square foot bank with drive-through or 6,000 square foot restaurant with no drive-through on an adjacent parcel, which is not part of this current request. And then the subject property with a 3-story 82,080 square foot building with first floor retail of 27,360 square feet, and then second and third floors with an additional 54,720 square feet of office. And then option B showing a three-story building, one three-story building with 33,164 square feet of retail and then 66,328 square feet of office on the second and third floors. The proposed zoning is to amend that middle portion of that old mixed-use sketch plan, the property identified as 2727 Walnut Street, and rezone that to MXD with an associated preliminary development plan, and to take the two residential parcels that are adjacent to this and remove them from that 2008 mixed-use sketch plan. The modification for the State Employees Credit Union would be to allow a one-story, 6,745 square foot financial institution with a drive-through, and then retain commercial designation for the parcel on the corner. So this is a view of the property. The area not shaded right here is 2727 Walnut Street, and that's the property of interest to the State Employees Credit Union. This is under separate ownership where there is the commercial or financial institution designation. And then the landowners of these two adjacent residential parcels have asked to be removed from that 2008 mixed-use sketch plan. This is a sketch of the preliminary development plan that's been in review with the Development Review Committee with staff for the past few weeks and has had comments. Shows the location of the building, the traffic circulation on the site, parking, and an applicant's rendering to give you an idea the general layout that would be applicable to this property. Property owners within 400 feet of the subject property were notified by mail. The property was posted and advertised. Staff did not receive any protest petitions. We have heard from the owners of the commercial portion. They may be speaking tonight. They just have some concerns about the overall process, and we'll let them speak to any other concerns that they have. We have not heard any opposition, but perhaps we'll hear some more information tonight as this goes through the process. Cary's transportation plan identifies Walnut Street as a major thoroughfare. There is a proposed transit route in the vicinity of the subject property, both along Walnut Street and Macedonia Road. And Cary's Parks, Recreation and Cultural Resources Master Plan identifies a street-side trail on the subject property, and that has been reflected on the preliminary development plan presented by the applicant. The site is impacted by stream buffers and a small area of wetlands as shown on Cary's GIS maps, and that will require field determination at the time of development plan review. At this time, I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward for that portion of the public hearing, and then staff will be available for any questions following the public hearing.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Glenda Topp with Glenda Topp and Associates. First of all, I want to say it's a delight to be here tonight, and it's a delight to be here for a non-residential project. For me, it's a treat. I am here tonight representing the State Employees Credit Union. The proposal is to amend the mixed-use sketch plan to allow a one-story financial institution. As Ms. Grannon pointed out, the current sketch plan does show a building for both commercial and office uses, and this use would be for the sole purpose of a financial institution. In our meetings with the property owners, and we did have 2 neighborhood meetings, the 2 parcels that Ms. Grannon referred to, there was a discussion with those property owners, and once there was a better understanding of what they have now and the fact that their property had a designation that was actually affecting them in a negative way, they did want to be taken out of the area in question in the sketch plan and wanted to go back to the R40 zoning. particularly since at this time there are no plans to develop their property. They are still within the greater mixed-use activities, mixed-use overlay district, but they wanted out of that sketch plan and to be R40. And they did come in and sign the necessary papers with staff for that to happen. Also want to point out that on the corner, there is still that 1.12 acre parcel that is still approved for commercial use, both either a restaurant or a bank. And this proposal leaves that parcel untouched, and it would still be shown and be part of the mixed-use sketch plan. Again, our preliminary development plan does show a one-story footprint of a financial institution. There are drive-through facilities with the proposal. We do feel the proposed use is in keeping with the surrounding area. It is at a scale that does fit in with the surrounding area and the residential that is nearby. There is a greenway trail that is proposed along Walnut Street. We feel that there's appropriate transition within and adjacent to this mixed-use activity center. A traffic study was performed for the proposed use. The plan incorporates all the recommendations of that plan. Also want to add that the State Employees Credit Union has been looking for additional sites within Cary to better serve its growing membership, which of course does include residents of Cary, and they are excited, to hopefully be at this location. As I pointed out, there were 2 neighborhood meetings where we met with the surrounding property owners. The representatives of the State Employees Credit Union have been meeting with the property owners adjacent to the site of that 1.12 acres to discuss the proposed changes in the site. There are several issues that are under discussion, some of which are actually more site plan related. Both parties actually, they met again today. We'll continue to work on these issues and feel that they will be addressed and worked out and resolved prior to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting in order to keep the process on schedule. And I'm here to answer any questions, and there are other members of the team who are here also. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grannon, have you completed the? Okay. We'll now open up the public hearing and invite the first speaker to the podium at this time.
Good evening. It's nice to see many of you again. It's been too long. I'm Nellie Shipley with Womble Carlisle, and I'm here representing K5 Associates. They're the owners of the adjacent parcel. It's the little triangular piece that's just above the site up there on the screen that you're looking at. I am an attorney, and I'm not here to fight. I'm happy to say that what we're here to do is just help make sure that this process continues, and I do use that word advisedly, continues to proceed coherently, cooperatively, and fairly. We do believe that good planning of this area is going to benefit all parties involved. What we want to make sure is that the record reflects what is still needed in this area. There's not a lot of meat on the bones yet. There's a lot still to be worked out, a lot of details. We want it to continue smoothly, and we want to make sure that the record reflects the information that's not necessarily quite in there yet. I'll point out to you that originally this site was to be a combined development, and thus that would have been one owner that was establishing the infrastructure, right-of-ways, that kind of thing for this site. Now it's going to be 2 separate owners and under 2 separate timeframes. That can sometimes impose some complications, and so we just want to make sure, as the second party in to be developing, that the record reflects what's necessary for our part when our part comes along. So for instance, there's some infrastructure that's going to need to be shared. You can see from the PPD for the site that it's clearly anticipated there'll be shared access, might need some shared parking, stormwater detention, which I know gets dealt with at the site plan level. I'll just mention, though, that really there's a lot of cooperative infrastructure that's going to need to go on here. And so far, I think, although the parties are working very cooperatively, and that's terrific, we do want to make sure that the conditions of this parcel going first include coming up with some mutually acceptable agreements establishing and memorializing what the rights are going to be with respect to this parcel. We don't want that little triangle up at the top to not have good access or any physical access, to not have the open space it needs, the stormwater drainage, the parking, those kinds of things. We don't want to be here complaining to you when that development comes along. So to that end, what we would like is that the preliminary plan reference the condition of establishing mutually acceptable agreements for the shared infrastructure for the site. We are going to hire an engineer to review the plans. That hasn't been done yet, so we're not even at the point of being able to meaningfully weigh in on whether or not the proposed access points to that little triangular piece are workable at this point, allow us enough parking, allow us good radius for turns. Want to get there, we're just not there yet, and that's nobody's fault. We're not mad at anybody about it. There's no controversy. Just want to reflect that that still all needs to be done. The only other thing I'd request is that my understanding is that the staff can help with a kind of a community workshop kind of function. We think that might actually be helpful so that the parties can work out these significant details. As I said, there's a lot of combination that has to go on these two sites, a lot of sharing. Would like to do that under circumstances where we're making sure that the conditions we come up with work for the town as well as the two parties as they go through the process. That's it for my comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Shipley. Next speaker for this public hearing, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions. Ms. Adcock.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. Ms. Grannon, can the town council control or require that the two landowners reach agreement about shared infrastructure?
That's something that is a site plan related issue. That would be a private issue that would need to be addressed at the time of site plan.
That's what I was trying to get to, private issue.
It is a private issue, and that's what we had conveyed to the property owner of the adjacent property. We had a DRC meeting with them yesterday to just talk about, what they would need to do with development of this parcel and how any changes to what was approved in 2008 would need to come back through a process similar to what took place or what is taking place right now with this property. Doesn't mean that there can't be discussions about what's shown in terms of the approximate access point shown on the plan. But private agreements like that would be a private matter.
Follow up. Okay, so just to be clear, the town is not in control of that process.
Correct.
We cannot require it, and it is not an appropriate zoning condition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll refer this to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation.
Thank you.
We now move to our fifth public hearing, rezoning 13 REZ 13. Ms. Bierman of our staff will give the presentation. We're going to hear from an applicant, and we're going to then we'll open the public hearing and refer it to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Bierman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing on a request to rezone approximately 0.63 acres at 6700 Carpenter Fire Station Road. The acreage shown on this slide is incorrect. Property is at the intersection of Carpenter Fire Station Road and Marsville Carpenter Road. You can see that property outlined in yellow. And this is a closer aerial view. There is an existing structure on the site that has been used as a residence in the past. The existing zoning on the site is ORD, Office Research and Development. The proposed zoning is R20. This district allows residential use with a lot size of about 1/2 acre. Under the current zoning, ORD residential or single-family residential use is not allowed. The land use plan designation is rural village, and residential use as allowed in R20 20 is in keeping with the historic use of the property and is also meeting the intent of the plan. This shows the boundary of the Carpenter National Register Historic District. The site is within that district right at this location. The rezoning is proposed to allow the use of an existing structure for residential use. This is a contributing structure in the historic district. At the current time, residential use is not allowed. According to Cary's GIS maps, a portion of the property is impacted by stream buffers. A proposed greenway trail is shown on the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan along Carpenter Fire Station Road. The portion of Carpenter Fire Station Road and Morrisville Carpenter Road along the frontage of the property is designated as a local street on the Cary's Transportation Plan. Would point out here that there is a current bond project near this area. That project would realign Morrisville Carpenter Road to line up with Carpenter Fire Station Road at NC 55. This is shown with the pink dotted line where that realignment would take place. As currently proposed, the intersection with the railroad would be grade separated, and construction is expected to begin in 2017 on this project. The nearest transit route is Triangle Transit Route on NC 55, which is about a quarter mile to the west of the site. The areas highlighted in yellow show properties that were notified of the public hearing, those properties within 400 feet. The site was also posted, and the ad was placed in the newspaper as required. We did not receive a protest petition. I did receive one call from a citizen this afternoon, just with an inquiry asking what the use of the property would be, but there was no concern expressed with the request as proposed. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'd now call on the applicant to offer his comments.
Thank you. I would invite the applicant forward at this time.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Keith Larson, and I'm not the applicant. I'm representing the applicant. Two of the homeowners are here in the gallery. And just wanted to make a few points noted to the intent of the use of the property that would be in compliance with the Rural Village overall plan. It's listed on the historical registry, and the homeowners have applied for benefits of tax rebates in lieu of keeping the property in the facial front exposure to the street as it stands right now. They don't intend to expand it left or right. They do intend to take the rear section of the house off because it was an add-on, and that add-on is in disrepair and needs to be demolished and rebuilt. The front portion of the original structure will be renovated and keeping in compliance with the original fascia, the clapboard siding, and the addition on the back will, as a minimum, be within the exact footprint of the property as it is right now, with hopes to potentially add an additional 5 feet projecting to the rear without any lateral left or right expansion. So the view from the front of the property will stay exactly as it is. The porch will be removed and repaired, or actually replaced. It currently has a septic on the property which needs to be reviewed with Wake County Environmental. We did verify that the existing well does pump clear water. It has not been tested by the Environmental Health Department yet, but we did verify that there is water from an aquifer that exists underneath the property. At this current time, we just like to express the consideration that they intend to use it as a single-family dwelling. They don't intend to use it as a rental property. In fact, the homeowners have expressed that one of them will be occupying the residence once if it is approved to be rezoned and then rebuilt and refurbished as a residence, a single-family dwelling. And we offer any consideration and your motion that you do approve this application because we believe that it will also add value to the overall rural village intent of the area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for this item and invite the first speaker to the podium. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing, see if a council member has questions or comments. None?
Refreshing.
It will go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Spearman.
And Mayor, can I just remind
Yes.
council, this is just a general rezoning, not a conditional use, and there are no conditions addressing the issues that were just discussed.
Thank you, Ms. Spearman.
Oh,
we now-
so, excuse me for a second. I see what you're saying regarding his comments about we're not taking out this side of the house or that side of the house or back. None of that is a condition of this rezoning.
That's
So
right.
We're just looking at it as straight as
A
R20.
residential 20.
We now move to land development discussion items. This is item F on the agenda, amendments to the land development ordinance. Mr. Parker will present the staff report, and we're going to hear from the Planning and Zoning Board representative, and council may take action on these items tonight. Mr. Parker.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As you're aware, there are two components to this, two different rounds of the land development ordinance amendments. First, round 25 includes amendments dealing with champion trees and beekeeping, and while round 26 deals primarily with sign regulations. With regard to champion trees, this amendment would ensure that when a champion tree is removed, the total caliber inches of replacement trees would equal the diameter of the trees removed. It would also raise the minimum size of the tree replacements from 2 inches to 2.5-inch caliber. As you are aware of, the council approved beekeeping on single-family lots last year. This amendment will allow beekeeping as an accessory use in conjunction with community gardens and also on homeowner association common open space, provided that the property owner grants permission, provided that a qualified beekeeper signs the application and certifies responsibility for maintenance and care of the hive. And then just want to note what a qualified beekeeper is. It's a registered member that has of a local or state beekeeping association and has some documented of some training in beekeeping. It's really important to note from a staff standpoint, this is very low bar test. You just have to end up showing us generally that you have some knowledge of beekeeping in order to be a responsible beekeeper. The next set of changes deal with sign ordinance amendments, and specifically these primarily deal with increasing the size of signs as well as increasing the number of signs. Most of these amendments are in response to requests we've received from the business community, and I'll go through each of them. The first one deals with increasing the size of logos. Presently, logos are limited to 20% of the allowable sign area. This would increase it to 30% allowable sign area, provided that you have no internal illumination of this larger logo. It's three-dimensional in design, carved or simulated carved wood, stone, or metal, and no high-intensity color. In certain circumstances, this logo could make up 75% of the allowable sign area on monument signs and on wall signs on buildings that have architecturally distinct building segments and meet those design standards that I just mentioned. Next deals with the measurement of sign areas, and this is simply to distinguish that when we measure signs, it's only on the sign face of distinct individual signs. And the reason for this, you might have a couple of different signs right above each other, and instead of measuring the space in between, we're just measuring the area of the sign face on each of them. This is an example of the 20% of allowable area on a logo. As you can see, this is not a three-dimensional, and it probably is internally illuminated. This would be a logo that meets these new design standards. There are several changes dealing with ground signs. First, with the ground signs, this amendment would increase the height of ground signs from 42 inches to 54 inches, which is ultimately 1 foot. Would also allow ground signs for shopping centers. Right now, out parcels in shopping centers aren't allowed a ground sign. And so this would allow those out parcels to have ground signs, provided that they still stay at the 42-inch height, and also maximum sign area is 16 square feet, whereas a regular ground sign is 32 square feet. This would also allow more ground signs on non-residential multi-tenant sites at each principal entrance. And today, things like shopping centers can have ground signs, another ground signs for the entire shopping center on each primary street that they front. And so, so if you have frontage on 2 streets, you can have 2 of these kind of more entryway signs that kind of name the shopping center typically. And so this would increase the number because some shopping centers have more than 1 principal entry on those roadways. So in order so they don't get cluttered, they have to be at least 300 feet apart from any other ground sign on the site. With regard to principal ground signs, the current standard is 3.5 feet, 32 square feet, and I've put this sign here to show you that they have to be architecturally compatibility, so they are of high quality, and so when we do add additional ground signs, they will meet our architectural or design standards. One of the reasons for staff recommending increase in height to the ground sign is that we feel like by getting it a little bit higher, it allows the opportunity to be above the vegetation that's usually planted with these monument signs or ground signs to make them aesthetically pleasing. Also, it has the opportunity to get the text above the ground so they're more visible to the public. Specifically, this amendment increases the height, maintains 32 square feet for the principal ground sign, except for, like we said, within these shopping center out parcels, maintains architectural compatibility. But if you did go up to the higher, taller sign of 4.5 feet, you would be required to do some landscaping. And that landscaping doesn't have to be in front of the sign, it can be off to the side. With regard to staff's recommendation for allowing out parcels of shopping centers to have ground signs, we just feel like it makes sense for several reasons. One, there's a lot of mature landscaping which has grown in pretty well, but that unfortunately does have some drawbacks in the sense of hiding the wall signs to out parcels, and also those I guess the vegetation within the interior of the site as well. There also seems reasonable because if you're an out parcel or a parcel of similar size that are not in a shopping center, you do get an out parcel, whereas if you're in a shopping center, you don't. So it seems like there might be some reasonableness with that. And it could potentially reduce the number of violations that we have with severe pruning of vegetation and damage to our trees. As you can see, even in the wintertime, wall signs could be blocked by the vegetation requirements, especially in the full foliage times of years. So with regard to ground signs and out parcels, like to restate, we wouldn't allow them to go up the extra foot. They would still maintain the 42 inches, and we'd actually reduce the size to 16 square feet. Just a note, a lot of the ground signs you see don't use the full 32 square feet. Most signs are, smaller. They're usually more like 16 square feet. So we don't feel like, having a smaller sign in a shopping center for these out parcels is it would still be plenty of visibility for the out parcel. In order to make sure we don't have
on top of each other. There would be a separation of at least 200 feet between ground signs, and typically how that's implemented, we usually have a master sign plan, and they would kind of note where the signs would be located on that master sign plan to kind of help coordinate that when people come in for sign permits. Again, with regard to allowing ground signs at entrances of multi-occupant projects, the proposed regulations, 1 ground sign per entrance from a street. We also, some parcels might have frontage on the street, but because of the spacing wouldn't be allowed at entrance. And so we felt like that we still would allow a ground sign, even though you wouldn't have an entrance on one of the streets. And a minimum separation of at least 300 feet between ground signs. And so that kind of also spreads them out. One of the things that the Planning and Zoning Board wanted us to do is kind of maybe visually show how this would look. Particularly, we have some out parcels out at Crossroads along Walnut Street. And so we actually had our staff kind of simulate some ground signs that would be along Walnut Street. And because of the separation and the architecturally compatibility of the signs, we just felt like that, providing that flexibility would balance with providing increased visibility, but also maintaining our appearance of our community. Next set deals with monument signs. Our current regulations with monument signs they are limited to 12 feet in height. They have to be 75% masonry, 32 square feet of sign area per side, 10-foot setback off the roadway, and 1 square foot of landscape per 1 square foot of sign. With regard to where these are limited to, only with residential subdivisions or non-residential centers or developments. Primarily you see these in shopping centers. And for individual non-residential parcels of greater than 15 acres. The ordinance would continue to keep that 12-foot limit and 32 square feet current standards for building square footage on the site that's less than 130, up to 130,000 square feet, excluding out parcels. So we maintain that standard. But if a development like a non-residential shopping center would have at least 130,000 square feet in the non-out parcel buildings, then you could go up to 16 feet in height and increase the square footage allowed on that sign to 50. Another change for your consideration is to potentially allow some of artwork on top of the monument sign, provided the height of that artwork is less than 25% of the height of the sign, so it would keep it in perspective, in low perspective. But also that piece of artwork to be allowed to be on top of the sign, it needs to be part of a larger a component of a larger piece that would be adjacent to that monument sign. The next significant revision is wall signs. Staff has evaluated this, and we feel like there is some merit to increase the size of wall signs, provided that certain conditions exist. Staff is recommending that all commercial buildings, including single-tenant buildings and businesses throughout in the town center and townwide, would go up to 1.5 square foot of sign per linear feet of frontage of the building. To go up to a higher level, the incentive is that you have to meet the architectural building design standards, and typically those require buildings to be divided up into segments, and so that would go up to 2 square feet per linear building frontage. And even a greater, for those big retail tenants, that leasable space of 100,000 square feet or more, and would have architecturally distinct building segments, they would actually be able to go up to 3 square feet of sign area per linear building frontage. And as you can see, this is kind of a picture of current standard, which is probably more like 1 to 1.25 square feet of sign area. As you can see, they're somewhat smaller signs and may not be as visible from a distance. And this is an example of 2 square feet per linear frontage, would provide a little bit more visibility, especially for grocery stores or major tenants. This is just an example of a perspective of the sign size compared to the building on a single tenant. And this is kind of the illustration of when you have a large tenant and you have architecturally distinct segments, you're able to spread that signage out among the different segments, and so it doesn't look as significant of having this, 3 square feet of sign per linear feet of, in one location on the building. This is, next slide's an illustration of what that looks like on a building. This is 1.5 square feet of sign area. Increasing to 2 would be the pinkish color, and then going to 3 would be red. So you can see it spreading out the signs. There's really not as much that much of a visible increase in sign area. So this goes from 1.5 to 3 to show how much more that increases on signs. So staff feels comfortable with this recommendation to increase it on large tenants that have architecturally distinct segments. The last sign-related changes deal with suspended signs. We recommend going from 2 to 4 square feet in size. Neon signs going from 2 to 4 square feet in size. We also have some other changes we're recommending for your consideration. And then clarifying the definition of public art as it relates to signage as well. So this is an example of a suspended sign, just increasing that to 4 square feet per side, and still would have the design standards, no internal illumination. Our current standard with neon signs that you're limited to 1 with a maximum of 2 square feet in area. And this is only allowed with the ordinance today within the mixed-use overlay districts and within the town center. As you can see here, this neon sign is somewhat typical of the size of the sign. It's more 4 square feet than 2 square feet, because that's typically what's on the market, between 3.5 to 4 square foot for a general sign like this. It's important that none of the neon signs allow flashing like this one. And so, and also this wouldn't constitute a neon sign because you have individual lighting on each of the components of the sign. This is also not a neon sign. It's more of an illuminated type sign. True neon signs usually have a tubular part, and they usually can be seen. You can see through them and not have a backing. So the proposed amendment would be going up to 4 square feet and a maximum up to 3 neon signs, window signs, 1 per side, up to 3 sides. And for your consideration too, if council wanted to entertain it, right now the sign on the right, which is just an illuminated window sign, would not be allowed today. It would be up to council to consider if you want to say, okay, do you want to expand the option to not just have neon, but just have 1 illuminated sign that would be no more than 4 square feet, up to 3 sides. And the other item to consider, would you be open to allowing illuminated window signs town-wide for all commercial uses? And the reason staff brings this before you, just for your consideration, is that we have a lot of businesses that throughout the town that are not in these non-residential are the mixed-use overlay districts that are commercial businesses that would have neon signs. So again, it's up to you all to determine that policy. Also, if you just allowed one illuminated sign, it could be more manageable for staff to enforce. Plus, right now, they could have a paper window sign that would be as, even brighter than the illuminated window sign there. So it could make sense. But again, that's all an option for you all to consider with this amendment. The next item deals with public art and ground signs. This is a sign and a piece of art. And from staff's perspective, the way we've interpreted it, that they're two separate items. The art piece would be this piece right here is the piece of art. This is a support piece, and we feel like that as long as the support piece of the base meets the height of the ground sign regulations, we feel like that a sign can be placed on that and the ground sign. And so from to help clarify that in the ordinance, we want to propose that you could have a piece of art on top of a support base, provided that the Art Advisory Committee had recommended that that was a piece of art. But no signage would be located on the art piece itself, and that the support structure, would meet the requirements of the ground sign and meet the other requirements. Last item deals with flags and flagpoles. We feel like there could be some more flexibility with regard to flags. We already have existing situation where we have two flags on top of a building, and we also have a request to have another flag on top of a building. And so we feel like that you could have up to two flags on a roof of a non-residential building where the building was at least 3 stories in height, or the tenant space is greater than 100,000 square feet, and the building is further at least 300 feet from a thoroughfare roadway. Another option, if you wanted to add the extra caveat, would be that the building would have to meet the architectural building design standards, but that's up to you all if you wanted to add that caveat, if you wanted to restrict it even further for those types of flags. The maximum pole height would be 25 feet above the roof line, and the maximum height would be 8 by 12. So now I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the Planning and Zoning Board to provide their presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm going to try to summarize our comments in pieces because we had some fairly lengthy conversations on some of these things, and I want to make sure I don't get them confused. I'm going to start with the signs. We did suggest that in addition to neon signs, you might want to consider other current technologies like side-emitting fiber optics and things like that that have the same appearance but are probably more aesthetically pleasing and more energy efficient. We suggested that you be provided with a comparison of what's being proposed and the recommendations of the Sign Ordinance Task Force that you chaired or you staffed, is it 3 years ago now, 2 years ago? I was on it, and I can't even remember.
Long time ago.
Long time ago, but I'm suggesting since you did bring a bunch of citizens and businesses together, and they put in about 6-7 months of work, that we ought to at least consider what they suggested before we do something quite different. I know since I was on that Ordinance Task Force, if we come up with something that's very different, I expect to be asked by some of the other members of the task force hey, what's going on? We recommended a continuation of the prohibition on out-parcel ground signs, and this was before we had the suggestion that they be separated by a minimum separation of 200 feet. Here's the concern. If you drive down Walnut Street at Crossroads and you allowed every out-parcel to have a sign, you'd see 10 out-parcel signs in 2 blocks. And while I really appreciate, we all really appreciated how important it was for these merchants to be seen, and we appreciate the issue of having trees kind of block some of their visibility, do we really want to create what would kind of look like a military obstacle course or a steeplechase of 10 signs lined up in 2 blocks? Now, at the time, we hadn't seen this 200-foot separation. That's a new recommendation. So you might have to reconsider, I don't know what the distance is there. Is it 1,600 feet where you could still have 8 monument signs? I'm sure that whatever the maximum is, folks are going to find it and stretch us right toward it. And let me see. We had some real angst about this idea of advertising underneath public art. The idea that you have something that's supposed to be aesthetic and public art, and then you can put any splash of logo or advertising or any kind of signage underneath kind of questions whether the art is part of the sign and therefore supporting the message of the sign, therefore kind of violating the spirit of the sign ordinance, or the art is really adding to the effective messaging area of the sign, et cetera. One of our members felt very strongly that that was inappropriate. So I think that summarizes our sign discussion. On champion trees, our primary concern was actually in 2 areas. One, we would prefer to have larger caliper replacement trees, because obviously when you take a very large caliper champion tree and replace it with a bunch of little ones, the effect is very, very different. And so if you can have fewer but larger trees, that was desirable. We understand that there's an issue, however, as you get larger trees, replacement trees, their survivability becomes more in question. And so we understand the 2.5-inch caliber. We would have liked to see it higher, but the arborists are smarter than we are, so we accepted that. And the other question we asked, which I think you'll find reflected in the staff report, was a concern that we do more to protect our champion trees rather than just allowing them to be cut down and replaced with a bunch of smaller trees. And I'll be honest with you, this came right after a tree at the McDonald's parcel on Walnut Street had just been cut down, and there was another case down at Waverly that was cited as a beautiful old champion tree that was just cut down, what appeared to be out of convenience for the new site plan. Felt that maybe we want to take a little bit firmer stand on that. And then finally on beekeeping, we did support the recommendation on beekeeping. One of our members felt that it was inappropriate for us to try to designate that they be qualified in some way, that we somehow say they have to be trained. Now, we did vote 6-1 in any case to support the ordinance revision, but I just wanted to provide voice to that one objecting vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
I have a question.
Could you address the neon signs too? If you can address that, that y'all just recommended go up to 4 square feet, and not what staff recommended?
Oh, yeah, on the neon signs, well, I think we supported what you're currently recommending now, right?
No.
You convinced us very effectively, I think, during our meeting that you can't buy a 2 square foot neon sign?
No, I just wanted to clarify that.
All right.
that-
Let's see if we can sort this out between ourselves. We'll go out in the parking
Sorry,
lot and
sir.
fight it out.
No, it was more that the other aspects that the staff was considering is to allow it to be opened up townwide to not just that, and also to consider the just illuminated window signs and allow them up to 3 sides. Y'all just keep it like it is.
Thank you for that reminder. Yes, we did have some fairly considerable conversation on that. I believe that we settled down that the idea of these illuminated window signs, there was an inequity in the fact that, where you live determines whether you could have one of these neon signs or not. And so we thought that probably should be more appropriate townwide. But as for these lighted, I think you called them box signs? Illuminated signs. I think we referred to them as illuminated box signs. I think we had far less sympathy for that. Did I get it right now?
Also, I'm sorry.
It's been a couple months, so I need the...
It was a lot.
And there was a lot of sangria in between.
Okay. You also just allowed it to only be 1 neon sign, and it wouldn't be allowed up to 3 sides. It'd just be 1 neon sign.
Thank you very much. I didn't have that in my notes, and I should have.
It would just be as
1 neon sign rather than 3. The proposal, as I understand it's written right now, if you have 3 frontage sides in your building, you could have 3 neon signs. And we thought that, that's a lot of neon. Thought it was appropriate to say you can have 1 neon sign, period. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Before we start questioning all this material, I'd like to organize it, please.
Yes, me too.
Thank you.
Let's first, I'm sorry?
Do the easy one first.
Well, I don't know which one that is. First, I would like to tackle the champion trees. If we could do that one, then I would like to go to beekeeping, and then we could do signs after that.
We do one sign change at a time.
If we need to,
I
absolutely.
would like to.
Well, let's do the champion trees first.
Wait a minute.
All right.
Before he leaves, if you
But
have a question.
he's not going to go anywhere. We're going to make him
I just
stay
want a
there.
question for clarification.
Okay, absolutely.
I just wanted to understand in that feedback, if during the beekeeping, there was any discussion about the fact that if it's in a site that's not near the homeowner or near the beekeeper, was there any concern about liability or any concern about nobody really taking care of it? Was there any discussion like that at all?
Well, there was a discussion about liability, and in fact, our concern with defining who the responsible party was partially focused on liability, because obviously whoever owns the property is going to be liable for whatever damage the bees might do to some other adjacent property owner. Basically, we came down to, well, you got to have some kind of qualification, and this is where our discussion about what it is to be a beekeeper got a little bit disjointed. We finally decided 6-1 that the staff's recommendation that you have to have some training and you have to be a member of an association, I believe.
That's correct.
We decided that that probably is about as much due diligence as we're going to be able to force on this topic. And I think there probably was a little bit of an expectation that there aren't going to be an awful lot of these around town.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand if that conversation happened. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. Stay close by. We're going to start with champion trees.
If you could sit down if you wanted to.
Yeah, please. I mean, I didn't mean stay up on the podium. Stay close. Let's start on champion trees, and I'll entertain anyone. Ms. Adcock.
Well, this is so timely that this is coming to us after our last meeting when we had a discussion. In fact, we continued a quasi-judicial hearing, and one of the, I think there were 7 minor modifications that were requested. One of them had to do with champion trees, and that, I think, gave us more heartburn than almost anything else. And so I'm fine with the way this is rewritten. I understand the arborist knows more than we do about at the time of installation, the trees that replace the champion tree shall be a minimum of 2.5 inches, but I would like to see some, something in the ordinance that says that champion trees are not removed for convenience.
As a last
Because
resort.
they're removed because they're going to be in the middle of a road. I mean, of the 4 trees that they asked us about last time, I can't talk about this. Okay, let's take an example where a champion tree was going to be in the road that had to be built, or was going to be in the right-of-ways. This I understand, but not to do anything for convenience. I think that is not where we're going.
Can I clarify something?
Sure.
One of the things that the P&Z board recommended is a separate evaluation and ordinance amendment dealing with what you were just saying, so that staff could go in and try to come up with some language that we could put before council to figure that out.
Address that very thing.
Yes.
I
And
agree.
so that would be a separate thing, but we would want some direction, like you were stating, that a balance between developing the site versus saving. And so you were just saying that if it was going to be right in a roadway that needed to happen, if you could give us some general direction about how you want us to move with that. So
I'll take a shot at it if I may.
Well, I think Al would like to add something.
We actually, I think, made a recommendation, and that is that you all consider some sort of policy that would govern the removal of champion trees in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And I think specifically what we're looking for is to make it pretty darn difficult to take one of these champion trees and remove it, and so you're heavily motivated. So a developer or a property owner is got very strong motivations to build around rather than cut down and replace.
One thing I don't want to see is what we saw at Cary Town Center with the island and the big tree in the middle of it. I don't want to go there with this ordinance. I want to make sure we don't do that.
I think we're just looking at common sense and what should be done for convenience versus what must be done for reasonable development of the land. And my question is policy going to be enough, or does it need to be an ordinance? I mean, that's my question.
Yes, ordinance.
Yeah, I believe it should be an ordinance because I think it gives this whole situation more teeth. I think it's fair to developers to know on the front end when they meet with staff, these are the guidelines, so that requests for modifications don't come to us for which are going to be shot down. I think it's only fair to be extremely clear about what's going to go and what isn't.
Do we need that in the form of a motion, or can we just give direction?
We need a motion to approve the amendment when we get there.
There'd be two separate motions.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that second one for you.
All right.
Time comes.
I didn't hear a motion. I thought we were just...
We were just talking.
I'd like to ask a question with regards to Mr. Swanson's bringing up the question about an arborist. Where did the number 2.5 inches come from, or 2 inches? Is that from some recommendation?
Yes. We as a staff, we have a couple arborists on our staff and the town staff, and they just felt like, when you plant larger trees, there's just a lot of shock and hard to adjust, and it takes several years to really get those going, and the survivability is difficult. So we felt like based on research, the smaller trees end up adjusting better and are able to get closer and sometimes exceed those bigger trees over time and have more survivability. And so that's why staff had, the current ordinance is 2 inches, but we were okay with the Planning and Zoning Board recommending going up to 2.5 inches to make them a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's a 25% increase in the, is it diameter or
Caliper
width,
inch,
or
yeah.
caliper inch? And I did appreciate Mr. Swanstrom's discussion about potentially having fewer but larger. Are there different trees that do better when they're 4 inches? Certain types of trees are better at 2 inches. I just,
sure,
this whole general, hey, you can take out a 100-inch tree and replace it with 52 inches.
Sure.
It makes me a little nervous. You don't get the same look.
Well, there are certain standards that have to be met. They have to be They can't be just crammed in there. There has to be a distance so they'll be able to grow into the champion trees. And what we've found is that because sites are limited, they end up going up to bigger sized trees because they don't have enough space. And so they have to go up to 3-inch or 4-inch trees in a lot of places.
In order to get the maximum?
In order to get meet the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So, in fact, this would actually increase the caliber inches planted back because right now there's certain trees like a pine tree that actually, if it got cut down, you really don't have to replace it.
Understood.
So.
Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on your comments, Mayor, that, especially if there is a tree in decline, that, we don't alter the development plan for that tree, and then 5-10 years later, the tree comes down, and you kind of wonder what the heck used to be there, or why'd we do it that way, but, so I just think we take that into consideration, but I'm all for an ordinance or something that better protects our champion trees.
Do we have anything to prevent what happened at Cary Town Center from happening again? There was a mountain with this large tree on it, and it got struck by lightning and eventually had to be removed anyway. But.
The staff had recommended against that.
Okay.
What memory you have.
Sorry, I wasn't here for that. The staff recommended against that original tree protection?
Jack was here.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And did you vote for it or against it, Jack? I'm sure.
Depends what my memory is.
I think Jack planted the tree.
Whoa, it's
I'm going to ignore that. I think Gale brought up a good point, though. It just feels too easy to work around some of these trees. I know you can't create an ordinance on attitude, but I think something has to demonstrate that you come in with a site plan. And I'm thinking of the McDonald's up on Walnut Street. It defies to the casual observer that all of those had to come down. Now, maybe it had to, but it just seems that that some effort could have been made on that site plan to at least save some of those champion trees. Now, maybe that's a bad example. I don't know. Maybe that's the only thing you can do based on the site and the rights of the property owner. But I do think that we've got to somehow put some language in that those site plans are going to go through a real extensive scrutiny, just like the other one where we had those 4 trees, and you're right, one was in the middle of the road and had to go. But I don't know, there's got to be something that to the person coming here that wants to make a change and put those trees at risk, there's got to be something that they see an alarm go off that says, we better be real careful here. I know that's so weak and tepid, but I don't know how else to do that. But to me, your best bet is whatever you can do to save it so we don't have to get into this 2.5-inch caliber stuff. I don't know. And on the 2.5-inch caliber, I understand the logic of larger trees, but I still think you could move that up and have some, and still have some semblance of saving. So, I just want to see a lot of scrutiny here before we make that decision.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, I appreciate you saying that about the McDonald's because I think I'm very impressed that they're building their second LEED certified green building on Walnut Street, but cut down, a beautiful champion trees in order to do that.
There's an irony to that sign there.
There
Right?
certainly
There's
is.
an irony to that sign, yeah.
Just a question. Of course, the item that Gale started talking about that we can't talk about, we just discussed, but that was the first time in over a year I recall an arborist coming in or having it actually in the site, discussed. Do we, in general, when there's a champion tree on a site plan, are we notified of that? Is that normally? It's my year plus here. That was the only case I remember that actually discussed that. Do we normally see that on a regular plan? Did you tell us there are 4 champion trees here, or 3 here, or 2? I don't recall
We-
that.
Yeah, I mean, when site plans go before you for approval, we typically note that, yes, because the deferral of whether those get removed, that decision gets moved from staff to council. So
When does that happen?
when a plan goes before you.
Oh, I mean,
So-
that wasn't coming to us because of the trees.
No, it wasn't, because right
So
now,
normally, if it was just a tree removal, it wouldn't be coming to us.
yeah.
So that could be something that we incorporate in what Gail's talking
That
about.
would explain why we don't see too many.
That's right.
Sure.
No, I would support this ordinance now, provided we have direction for a second ordinance to look at these.
Yeah,
other-
2 motions I'm ready to
Yeah.
make.
So I know Gale is.
Is everybody ready for a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move approval of LDO Amendment Round 25, 25B2.
Second.
Motion is second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Before you get to the second motion, we need a comprehensive plan of consistency statement for that ordinance amendment.
Did you want to just do that at the end for all of it when we get through?
Can we
I
do
do
that?
that?
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Okay, we'll
Okay,
do that. then.
So may I ask a clarifying question before I make a motion then? So how specific should I be? Should it be about, well, let me float my motion by you, and nobody second it. Let me see how it sounds, okay? I move that we direct staff to develop ordinance language to clarify conditions under which healthy champion trees may be removed. Then I was going to add for development or redevelopment, but that doesn't take into account putting in roads, or I'm just thinking maybe I should put a period after
They just put period.
removed. That's going to cover all, okay, now I'm ready. Okay, so I move that we direct staff to develop ordinance language to clarify conditions under which healthy champion trees may be removed.
Second.
There's a motion, a second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. That's it for champion trees. You said do all of the consistency statements at the end of all the amendments?
Yes, you'll need a
Okay.
statement for those you approve and a statement for any if you disapprove.
You're
Okay.
keeping track of all that, right?
Yes.
Got it.
Beekeeping.
Somebody.
Council members, I'll open it up to you. Ms. Adcock.
Okay, so I'm fine with beekeeping in homeowners association, common space and all that. And while I would ordinarily not support a certified beekeeper having to sign off on a piece of paper, the reason I will support this is that this is the person who says, I will be responsible for maintaining the hive. And I think that's the critical part. When we didn't agree for all those qualifications and all that stuff for residential homes who wanted to beekeep. But then it's implied who takes care of that hive, the homeowner. When you have common area, there's no one, if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. So for that reason, I would support that ordinance amendment as it comes to us.
Other comments, Mr.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff because they did it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Because I know that originally I brought up this issue because a number of community gardens had brought it up to us that they felt left out of that homeowner discussion in residential. And I did hear from a couple of them, and most of them already have a certified beekeeper on site. There are a few that don't, that will go after that certification. But I think they agree with you that the lack of a real knowledge and ownership, not on church property, not in some property where there's a particular owner who's just giving out their land, but in some homeowners associations or even some of the gardens that are, maybe guerrilla gardening, you don't really know who owns that land. So I understand Michelle Muir had some great points that we don't require this residential, but that implication is there, and I appreciate staff going to that effort.
Mr. Yerha.
Yeah, I didn't support our current bee ordinance, and I'm not going to support this one for sure. The reason I didn't like our current one is because it only had the 10-foot distance from the property line or the sidewalk. The research that I've done before that and since, and I know you can't believe everything you read on the internet, I understand that. But the sites that I've been looking at that deal with urban beekeeping, et cetera, many of them, if not all of them, recommend 20 feet instead of 10. Our staff, I believe, originally had 20 feet in the original ordinance. I'm going back to the original one, not the new one. But had originally had 20, but it got watered down to 10 as the discussion went along through P&Z. And it also, things that read also recommend screening with a fence or vegetation. We don't have any of that in our ordinance. And it also recommends in some cases have even a greater distance from a sidewalk or a pedestrian walkway. We don't have that in our ordinance. So now we're taking this and putting it in a common area or a community garden with, there's no 10 feet involved here. We're talking about an open area. There's no discouragement whatsoever to someone going up there to the hive. Now understand, these honeybees are not aggressive creatures. Understand that, except when they're disturbed. If the hive is disturbed, anything can happen. At least on a private property where you have a homeowner present, there's some discouragement, I think, from a passerby trespassing, if you will, onto that private property, even though it's only 10 feet. At least that gives me a little comfort. Here, there's no trespassing involved. It's almost an open invitation. It's open space. I mean, you can go right up to it if you want. And there's nobody on site to tell you no. So, I mean, I think we're creating a problem here that we don't want. I think there's a safety issue. Nothing against bees and honey and beekeepers. I just don't see the groundswell movement for needing to do this with the possibility of something occurring, with some injury occurring, not only to the people, but to the bees themselves out here in the middle of nowhere, if you will. So I didn't like the original one, and I certainly don't like this one.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I actually agree with a lot of what you said regarding responsibility and everything on this particular common space type thing. I, too, didn't really see much of a concern with it at the individual residents, because there is, for the most part, always somebody going to be there, at least daily. I'm not so sure that somebody's always at a community garden daily. If a hive is knocked over, it might be hours before that's discovered. I don't know. I'll be totally honest with you, I could read a book on the bee thing and go take some test and get some certification, and then I could be the guy, and I don't know the first thing about bees. So this one does give me a little heartburn, just because of the fact that there's not somebody on site every day. So I kind of was wanting to listen into everybody's comments before. I wasn't really sure where I was going to go on this one up until, so.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, it gives me a lot of heartburn. I think we're trying to accommodate a rare exception and the risk in a unmanaged area with or without somebody that has, those credentials that you were talking about. Understand that. I'm not comfortable wanting to take that risk and trying to solve this problem by allowing it in community areas or common open areas for all the reasons that Ed said. So for me, it's not kind of heartburn. To me, it's major heartburn.
Okay.
May I ask a question from an enforcement perspective? If this does not pass, what happens to the community gardens that already have bees and have qualified beekeepers that are managing them? What does the town do?
They're currently in violation of the ordinance already, aren't they?
I thought we had an agreement that when something was being considered, there was no enforcement.
Yeah, we put a stay on it until council makes a decision on it. Until we get notified of where these are or we get complaints, we right now don't go out and just do a search for these hives, but when we get complaints, then we go out and we'd have to enforce whatever's on the books.
Yeah, I just say, I understand the issues. Let's be honest, we don't ask pet owners to take a certification test to make sure that they are good pet owners when they walk their dog and their dog potentially attacks someone. And I understand that bees, they're not leashed. So, they could go anywhere, but they're generally not, hostile. I just feel that there are a lot of good citizens that are out there on multiple church properties with community gardens where people are there every day, at the YMCAs where people are there every day, at local community gardens that are shared lots. I think that we haven't heard of a lot of problems, even though the bees have been there. And potentially, again, it's an equity issue. If we allow some of these bees at people's backyards, but we don't allow them in basically the same type of thing of a garden, potentially where, one, we have the bee population that's already shrinking. We have potential issues with gardens not doing as well as they could. And I'm not sure that we have the issue today where we already have bees in a lot of these community gardens. In some respects, grandfathering them in.
Could we keep the community garden language and take out HOA common open space area? I mean,
It's up to you.
I mean, do we have people that are actually keeping bees in an HOA common open space area right now? Or is it just community gardens?
Rob, do you know?
We have not seen any of these actually out in the field.
Okay.
And then the only, I just, I don't want to spend an hour on bees, so 3 people in town can do it. I could do community garden, given that there's somebody there often. HOA common open space area, I'm not so certain why that's in there.
Motion?
Can I make a comment first?
Sure.
So I'm thinking back to when we had the big beekeeping conversations and thinking about the certified beekeeper who came from NC State. And as I recall, talking about setbacks and buffers and all that, he shared, what I remember is that he shared with us that there's no scientific reason to have any setback. Bees fly straight up and over. They don't pay attention to buffers, and they don't pay attention to hedges, and they don't care about setbacks, and that they're actually not going out to, there are very few bee incidents. They're just out there looking for nectar and water, and they're coming back to the hive. I could certainly live with taking out the HOA common space area if that would allow us another step closer to making sure that our vegetables and fruits get pollinized by these bees. But I just want to remind us of, we had an expert come and talk to us about all these safety issues for which there were concerns, but very little scientific data to back it up. So I would like to offer Lori the opportunity to move this, because I know this has been an issue of great interest of hers for some time. If you would
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that item C2 for beekeeping allowed as an accessory use, but I will take into consideration an accessory use in conjunction with a community garden, with the rest of the language keeping as written. So remove the HOA common open space area.
And I'll second that as amended.
And a second. Discussion?
I have a question for our staff. Should one of these apiaries be untended and you start getting complaints about it, what kind of policy do we have in place to follow up and say, look, they may have a qualified beekeeper, but if he's not coming frequently and he's not taking care of it, then we have an issue. So what's the town's policy then?
We would, if we did get some complaints, we would call the person that's accountable for it. Typically try to bring them in, understand the issue, educate them, and see if that resolves the issue. I guess if we ended up getting more complaints or it became some kind of safety issue, then there may be a chance that we could do some further action under our town code from a nuisance standpoint.
Yeah, I would recommend that we define some of those conditions that might be unacceptable, so that someone knows that if they do not take care of this remote apiary, that they're potentially going to lose it. And it's not like a subjective thing, it's completely objective. You're just saying, look, you're not you're not doing X, you're not doing Y, you're not doing Z, this is being shut down. Something like that, because that's my only concern, is that you don't have someone there all the time. It's not like in their backyard. They don't come frequently enough. I forget which one of you said if the thing got knocked over or if they weren't cleaning it out. I mean, I think, don't you have to like take care of the trays of honey? I'm not an expert obviously on this, but isn't there some like maintenance you need to be doing? You need to make sure the water is nearby. So I mean, if they're not taking care of a few of these things, then they shouldn't be allowed to continue.
Are there nuisance items articulated in the current residential beekeeping ordinance? I thought there were.
Would you like to speak to that?
That might address this.
Let Rob Wilson talk about that.
We don't have any current experience dealing with the type of situation that you describe. If such a situation arose, we would try to communicate. That's one of the reasons to have, in this case, someone who has some background, who is a member of a local association. That's the reason to have them involved with the application, so that we would know someone to go to. Being involved with the local association, we could also look to get the local association involved and see if they could help. Animal control would try to assist. We would try to do what we could to help improve the situation. But again, we haven't actually been confronted. It's a theoretical problem. We don't have any, fortunately, we don't have any experience dealing with that type of situation at this time. So,
Okay.
I guess worst case, we could always look at revoking the accessory use permit, if it was a repeated, reoccurring problem.
Okay.
So,
Mayor, may I just confirm that the language that Ms. Bush desires to remove is "and in common open areas owned by a homeowners or property owners association"?
Yes.
Thank you.
So basically, we have a motion on the table to allow bees in community gardens. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. All right, now with the signs. Mr. Barker, do you have a summary page of all of these? So if, rather than walk through each one, I'm not sure.
We'll walk through the logos first.
Okay. Questions with the logos?
Well, of course, first question is, do we want to make motions to approve each specific item?
Any recommendations?
Yeah, Mayor, may I? It looks to me, unless Mr. Barker disagrees, that it's one consolidated ordinance. There's deleted material and new material. And I would recommend that rather than voting on it independently, which in case you don't approve one part, it may upset another, that you give indications to staff of whether there's any part you're going to remove or delete, and staff come back to you with a revised ordinance.
I think that's a great idea because it's too confusing to do at the table.
Okay. So, got your pen ready, Mr. Barker?
I do.
Okay, logos, are we okay with that?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Moving on past logos.
See, that was easy.
Yeah.
First of all of my affirmative is with reluctance. Let me just say that.
She's saving her ammo for bigger
I
stuff.
am. Go ahead.
Major reluctance.
Okay,
Sign area.
Sign area.
Mr. Barker, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I just want to
okay.
make sure we're on that.
Are we okay with the sign area?
Yes.
Okay, keep moving.
This is,
Ground signs for out
signs
parcels.
for out parcels.
The ground sign one is huge, right? We could be here till Sunday looking at every little piece of this. Certain parts of it I don't mind, certain parts I do. I certainly don't mind the increase in height. I think that makes good sense when there's vegetation, that happens. You can't see the name to my subdivision, because of the vegetation.
Well, that's a different one than this.
No?
Well, no, the height of the ground
height.
sign is
Yeah,
part of this,
let me
right?
see if I can find that one.
This is
Increasing it from 42 to 54.
I thought this was.
for a shopping
This
center.
is saying, if for an out parcel,
Yeah.
you can put your ground sign, so.
Oh, so we're
This is
going to
the
look
Walnut
at the
Street one
ground
that they
sign one in each
Yeah.
by section.
And see, and I'm thinking this is like,
okay.
I picture, going along High House Road with the new out parcels coming there. and having all these signs going down High House Road.
But wasn't there a stipulation of 300 feet apart?
200 feet
200
still.
feet for the
If
small.
you're going 45 miles an hour, how fast does it take you to go 200 square?
It's 300 feet for shopping center.
That's
Yeah.
for the entrances.
Okay, I do not like it.
Okay.
For out-
Okay, so,
I have to tell you, the picture y'all showed ruined the deal for me. I mean, when I saw that, I went, oh my gosh.
The gas
I thought about
station
that
sign?
1,600 feet,
Yeah.
about these out parcel ground signs. I didn't think that was going to fly.
some,
No way.
So the question that I had reading this is, we're going from 3.5 feet height.
No, we don't have them right now.
No, this is,
I'll come to that in
If you
just a
go
minute.
into, let's say Stone Creek Shopping Center right now, there's a Chick-fil-A and there's some other out parcels. Let me use a better example, because the PDQ and the CVS and the bank and the tire place, they're all.
The Bojangles.
And the Bojangles, they're all out parcels. Right now, they don't have individual signs like you see here, but if we allow this, then they can go and stick individual signs out all the way down High House Road and Davis Drive every 200 feet.
Yeah, my issue or thought with that is who gets in first, right? So if they can
Where does the
only be
200 feet start? Is that
Where
what
does
you're
the 200 feet start? That was my list of questions, is where does that start? Who gets in first?
They would have to amend their master sign plan. We have a master sign plan on all these shopping centers and non-residential centers. And so whoever's managing or whoever wants to, like if we got a first request for an out parcel, we'd have to say, hey, you'll have to get with all the other out parcels and amend the master sign plan to know where those signs would be located, so they met the requirements, so that we wouldn't exclude an out parcel from being able to get a sign if possible.
Now, the out parcel, excuse me, is it all right if I continue just to follow up? The out parcel today can put the sign up on their building, like Bojangles, PDQ?
Yes, yes,
Correct. And we've increased the size of
yes.
how
It's just
that.
sometimes the
To our previous
vegetation,
call.
the vegetation screens it. So-
Okay.
I'm already hearing enough negative support or non-support for this.
Raise one
That's a
finger
double
if
negative.
we
so.
don't.
I don't think there's support for this, I'll just say that, so.
Yes, I see
Unless
that.
there's strong objection, we'll move on.
Well, I have strong objection,
Okay.
but I don't know that I'm going to win the day. I mean, it does go back to, you know, a lot of what Mr. Barker was saying is not necessarily our problem is with the sign ordinance as much as it is with our streetscape and buffer requirements that put so much vegetation up out of the street that you, even though they might have an out parcel, it's real hard to see the building from the street. So I don't want to just throw this, you know, I would almost like this to go back and maybe cook it some more and see if we can find a way to make something like this work. I don't want to just throw it all away. You know, maybe it's take 200 to 300 feet, make it 400 feet, put landscaping requirements on it, dress it up. I don't want to throw this one away.
Didn't we already allow them to put multiple business names on one sign at their entrance in a previous ordinance amendment?
Yes, we at one time had.
We're
we-
addressing it already.
At one time had a limit on the pieces of information you could have on a sign, yeah. That's been removed.
Yeah.
So when you're driving by a monument sign and there's 16 different business names on there, you can get them all like that?
Yes, I can.
Uh-huh.
I'm a fast reader.
Was this a request from a business owner? I just
We
wondered.
get requests for this all the time, but,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things.
Can you give me some examples of some businesses that are interested? I'm just curious where it came from.
Predominantly, it's the gas stations that are out parcels and shopping centers where they have trouble displaying their prices, the prices on the signs, because they can't have a ground sign, and they can't have a sign on the canopy as well. So that's probably the one that we've heard most often. We also hear from out parcels and shopping centers such as High House Crossing at Davis and 55, or at High House and 55, where there's a couple of out parcels that are back behind the shopping center. They're not actually part of the shopping center, so those entry monuments at the street don't really serve them. Inline tenants in a shopping center are usually under one ownership. The out parcels are under individual ownership, so it's difficult for them to get their names on that entry monument. So that we've been hearing for years a request for that to be considered.
That's a really good point.
Shall we move
Okay,
on? I
so-
still don't think there's support. I see no's down the line here,
Okay,
except for
this
Don,
is
I think.
the-
And Laurie hasn't committed.
I mean, I really see, I have looked for out parcels before, and that are not on that big monument sign. So as a user, I understand it, but I also am wary of agreeing to something that puts a sign every 200 feet. That's not aesthetically pleasing either. I mean, I would join Mr. Frantz in saying, is there a way to do this? Because how many times have I've tried to drive up to a gas station, I can't see, how much the gas is from there.
But you love technology. You could just do that little gas.
Not while I'm driving, Miss Robinson. I would not ever do that. Maybe you might.
Face more in the audience.
Okay, so,
So this next one could be somewhat of a compromise because it does allow more signs for shopping centers on entrances. And if you so happen to be an out parcel at an entrance, you might be able to get a sign. So.
I like this one.
I would have liked this better because most shopping centers have a main entrance. If you have the monument sign for the main entrance and you have a smaller sign for the smaller entrances, I would have felt more comfortable with that. You're going to have a big monument sign and then another big monument sign, I think that looks.
But there's 300.
Monument signs are limited to, like if you have frontage on 2 streets, you'd only get monument signs on each of those streets, so just 2 monument signs.
So you'd only get one per street?
Yes.
Okay, I feel better about
So
that.
then the other entrances cannot be substituted for a monument sign. They'd have to be a ground sign.
So the 300 feet is around a corner. It says minimum separation of 300 feet between ground signs.
that's a good question. It's not as a
Would
bird
be,
flies.
yeah, it should be any ground sign or monument sign. Yeah.
So in the details of this ordinance, it says that you may not have multiple of these on one street.
It says you can't have multiple monument signs on one street.
You get one.
Just get one.
But these are ground signs.
These are ground signs at
Oh,
entrances.
these are ground signs,
And
okay.
then-
At entrances.
Yeah,
So if there isn't an entrance.
There's no
on
sign.
that side, no sign.
well,
I'm actually okay with this one. I think it makes sense to have a sign where there's a turn, so you go, where does that go?
Right.
And I'm okay with the 300 feet.
I'm seeing nods in affirmative on this one and 1 no.
2 no's.
2 no's. Okay. So we like this one.
okay. This is increasing the height of principal ground signs from
I'm okay with
3.5 to
this.
4.5 feet.
This is good.
That's the one.
Everybody's good with this one?
Yeah,
That's the
this is
one
the
I'm
one I'm okay with too.
You were
think we're
okay with
good
the other
with
one?
Oh, yeah, you mean the logo, yeah, earlier.
Yeah.
Part of the, part.
2 on signs for you,
Another
Ed.
one comes
That's pretty
up.
good.
I like the flags, too.
Moving on.
As long as there are no bees around it,
All
right?
right.
Entry monument.
Flag of a bee.
This would increase the size of monument sign only for, and increase the allowable square footage only for those
Greater than
that
100.
greater than 130,000 square feet in size, so it would be limited.
I'm okay.
The reason I don't like this one is because of that size requirement. I mean, I understand it's only for the largest centers here, and how many of those are we going to have? It's not going to be a proliferation around town, but I'm worried that the smaller, medium-sized centers are going to say, well, you just allowed an increase to the big guys. Why don't I get an increase? I mean, not to the same size, mind you, but why don't I get a proportional increase too? It seems like we're being discriminatory, allowing the biggest guys to have.
Well, it
I
seems
think
like
a lot of that goes back to
It's scale.
scale.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a big monster building, the 12-foot monument sign doesn't fit.
Right.
When you've got a smaller building, no, you don't want a taller monument sign. So I think it has more to do with aesthetics and scale, so things don't look, out
I
of
don't
place.
know if everybody's going to understand that, or the smaller business owners.
They're also getting a lot of other sign allowances too that might soften that.
Not if I can.
Put that stake in the ground. Ian.
Ricky, can something be developed that addresses that to scale and proportionality?
Yes, if you want us to do that, we can come back.
Because I think I think that's what the concern I'm hearing.
Well, that's the way it is, isn't it?
No, it's
Well, it's just,
up to
it's very formulaic, if it's 16, it goes to 50. But what if the building's a small building, and all that?
Well, again, this only applies to residential subdivisions and non-residential centers or development. So non-residential center would, be shopping centers or like a office subdivision. So it's not like a single tenant could do this. So
I'm kind of feeling like take this step, see what kind of feedback we get, you know?
I'd like us to be, I'd like us to kind of track this over time and see if it starts looking really bad, having these 16-foot, monument signs that we then pull back in a future date.
I'm seeing at least 5 heads shaking yes. We'll keep this one.
okay, this is the option to allow a piece of art to be on top of the monument as long as it's in less than 25% of the height and also part of a component to a larger piece.
Would this art be reviewed by an art board?
Yes.
Okay. I think personally, anything you can do to dress up a monument sign or a sign, the better. So I think you at least give our citizen advisory board the opportunity to review it and weigh in on that and see if it makes it a benefit.
Yeah, in regard to this one, I'm okay with art enhancing a sign. I'm not okay with a sign enhancing art.
This is art
This
enhancing.
is art enhancing a sign. I'm okay
Right.
with this, but I just want to make that clear.
If one can enhance art with a sign, you know?
Is it theoretical?
Well, there's some art, if you cover the whole thing with a sign, it'd be better.
I'm just saying that's an assumption one makes.
I'm seeing at least 4 yeses and at least 1 no, so we're good to keep this one.
Who was the no? Ed?
Ed.
Okay.
This would be the wall sign increases.
This one, is this the one where you showed us the La Farm?
What?
Is this one where you showed us the picture of La Farm? It would have been helpful if you had kept that picture of La Farm and photoshopped it to show us what the new allowance would have been.
Yeah, that would go to
He
1
agrees
point.
with you. That's when he showed us the
That
conceptual
would go to
drawing that went.
1.5. So you really wouldn't see too much of an increase with that one because
It'd be like taking the La Farm sign and then just bold outlining it to increase the, that would be it.
Well, was that the picture that you showed us with the colors? The yellow to
Yeah.
green? Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
Again, because that center doesn't meet our current segments, it would only go up to 1.5.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be much of an
Oh,
increase.
I see what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah. That doesn't have the
Okay.
architectural breaks to make it look
Okay.
like.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's just a minor increase. So if you've got the newer buildings or somebody did a facelift to a shopping center, we give them incentive and give them more signage up to 2. And then if you're bigger, you get the 3.
Now, I just had a question that I was supposed to ask on this one, and I apologize for not knowing this. What does general shopping center mean to us?
There's a definition in the ordinance that means you have a main anchor tenant that I think it's at least, is it 40,000? Yeah. Of a certain size, plus you have as opposed to a strip shopping center.
Right, that's-
So
okay,
it
that's
has to have a
exactly right.
main tenant, community parking, shared parking.
Thank you, Ricky.
Okay, I'm seeing at least 4 yeses and another no down there. So we're good with this one.
Consistent.
Okay, suspended signs?
You're consistent too, Jack.
Any issue with suspended signs?
No.
No.
I just don't see the need for it.
I agree.
Okay.
There's a total need if you're driving down all this, when these trees actually grow and turn into nice big trees, it's going to help visibility.
This
but-
is usually just for pedestrians mainly.
Yeah.
I think we're okay with this
Yeah,
one.
we're
We
okay
still have a
with
no down there.
No? No.
You know too,
Okay.
Jack?
No, I said yes. Oh, wow. Give me a break.
Now look and say,
Oh, no.
Neon signs.
Okay, this has,
This one's going down in
again,
flames.
This one's going down.
just want to make sure I kind of outline this again. increased to 4 square feet from the neon sign. There is a change to the definition, as Chairman Swanstrom had mentioned. We did change the definition of a neon sign to include what he had recommended. This would allow up to 3 signs, 1 per side in the window. Again, those other 2 items that staff needed feedback on, do you want to open it up to other types of illuminated signs? Or the other thing is, do you want to allow it throughout the town in any commercial uses?
So I'm thinking this one's going down.
No, I don't want it.
Could we
One, two, three.
make a compromise? Could we do away with the sign on 3 sides, but at least allow the increase from 2 to 4 square feet? 2 to 4 square feet is incredibly nominal when taken as a whole.
There's already 4 no's. I think you're fighting a losing battle.
Just to make you aware, it is going to be it's going to be very challenging for staff.
Most neon signs sold are bigger than 2 square feet.
Yeah, and that's the issue.
Then they don't buy them. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm okay with allowing, for equity reasons, allowing neon signs in businesses other than the town center and mixed use. I think that's an equitable thing to do. But I'm not in favor of increasing the size or allowing it on 3 sides. And I think it's smart to change the definition to comply with new technology. And
What about that comment?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm all over that. Sorry. Were you going to say, oh, he's shaking his head.
No, I'm just shaking my head. Consistent.
I like the whole equitable thing, but I also liked it with the Christmas lights being in non-mixed use areas, non-town center, the non-twinkling lights.
I don't
But
we're not talking about
we're
old
not
stuff.
talking about that, I know, but I do feel like there's enough businesses that it seems like it would be a more equitable thing.
Let's clarify for the lady who wrote the letter to the editor in the Cary News. We did not regulate Christmas lights on your house. Does everybody understand that?
We're just talking about little
We did not
white
regulate
lights.
Christmas
Little
lights
white
on your house. So,
Okay, so I see 4 no's to your compromise, so neon's out.
No to the compromise about allowing it
That's right.
outside. Oh, wow.
1, 2, 3, 4.
How about that? I don't usually have my olive branches
Moving on.
discarded like that.
sorry.
Welcome to my world.
Okay, so you're leaving it completely the same? is what you're saying.
Completely the same.
Oh,
Okay, with 2 square feet. Okay. Okay, this deals with the allowing 2 separate things with the public art on top, as long as the support base meets the standards for a ground sign.
I don't have any problem with it. Quite frankly, the example shown, I like the sign better than I like the art.
Well, how does the sign even get approved? It's all rainbow colors.
Again, that right now was approved to be all black.
Okay.
However, with this change, there may be a possibility it would be allowed if you could view it as a 3-dimensional sign that's non-illuminated. But
Okay.
we haven't explored that.
Did we approve something that allows that? Did we already give you the?
No, we didn't. We approved it being black, all black, and not multicolor.
But there's nothing that we have said tonight that would allow that to have like rainbow letter signs.
We might have to stretch it to be able to allow it.
I don't want to allow it. I don't want to allow
I
it.
don't
Because
think
right-
she was going towards we should allow it.
Yeah.
I think the, right now, according to Deborah, it is 8 square feet, or 8.4 square feet. And if it was a logo, it could go down to 6.9 square feet and be okay if they registered it as a logo. But right now,
So
it's
on that sign, they could have a logo 6 square feet attached to
is it
that
6?
piece of artwork?
6.4.
Because it's a sign attached to an art piece and the whole thing counts as
No,
a sign?
because it's 20% of a principal ground sign, and the maximum area for a principal ground sign is 32 square feet. 20% of that would be 6.4. But they would have to get it registered with the Secretary of State to have that logo as part of their corporate advertising and marketing.
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't understand something earlier. So we allow 32, explain it again, I'm sorry.
Principal ground sign may have 32 square feet of signage area 20% of that can be in colors other than black, white. They can be in state or federally registered logo colors.
But in this case, that sign is not 32 square feet. It's, in itself,
Now,
it's
the allowable signage area for a ground sign. So the sign could have been bigger and then had just a logo
I understand that, but
area.
I thought our rule was that it was 20% of whatever that ground sign is.
It's what's allowed, so.
20% of the allowable signage area.
Okay, then I take back my approval of 30% then,
And that's,
from earlier, that stretch.
okay.
So basically, you're saying it can be the maximum of some rough number, which is it's 6.5?
6.4.
So, sorry, 6.4.
If it's 20%, but we just
But
said.
it doesn't even matter.
30%.
The sign could be 7 feet.
Could be.
And it could basically fill up that whole sign because it's 6.4. It doesn't have to, basically, I think what you're asking is, the sign doesn't have to be 32
No.
square feet. It can
do
just be
Misunderstood that.
7 feet. Right.
There are some signs that just have their logo, or they just use their logo.
Right.
Not very many, but
Right.
some, for example, you might see, the McDonald's on one side of the building wants to use the golden arches just on one side of the building. They don't have to have another second sign that says McDonald's on it. They can just have a small logo as long as they don't exceed 20% of their allowed signage area. So
Makes sense.
it's still restricted. It's never going to be above a certain amount, but it doesn't force them to have to do a larger sign to get the logo area that they're looking for.
I didn't catch that before.
I didn't either, so just for a point of clarity, if we move that 30% forward, I would not support that.
Let's just,
Then-
let's go
then
back to that.
Again,
Stick with
can I
this.
clarify something? The 30% could not include high-intensity colors. So they went to 30%. Those letters, some of those letters are high-intensity colors, and so it wouldn't be allowed if you went up to 30%.
That's where it has to be like simulated stone, wood.
Right, that's why I was, to get to the 30%, it has to be that carved,
Okay. it makes it a little
artistic
bit better.
stuff.
Something
I'm a
over,
bit confused. Maybe I don't understand this correctly, but is that sign that's currently there meeting our current ordinance?
No. Because
And it's not because of the colors, right? Not
it is
the
because,
sign.
it is because of the colors.
The colors are the thing that makes it.
And that
Because-
is not what was
Right,
approved by
Because
the planning director or staff?
what we approved was, and Deborah can correct me, it was the letters would be all black, and that's what was submitted and what was approved, but the sign that was put up is what you see.
And is that an enforcement issue? What
Yes,
is
and
the-
we stayed the enforcement until we got through this ordinance amendment.
Oh, well, that was nice of us, okay.
Yeah.
So is the heartburn the colors then?
That's the royal.
I don't like signage unrelated to the art on the art.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you.
Same here.
I
There's
mean,
one,
if
two,
you had a
three,
little sign that
four.
had like the
No,
artist's
no.
name
Yeah, that's a no.
dedicated
I wanna
in
talk
memory
I was
of-
pointing to Jennifer.
No, I don't like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's 4 no's.
Okay.
I
I'll have to-
I just want clarification. The no's because you don't like the signage being on the art or the color?
It has nothing to do with this example.
It has nothing to do with this example,
Right.
okay?
It's the
Yeah.
general principle of signage on art that has nothing to do with the art.
Let me tell you the feedback I've received, and I'm looking for advice, okay? I know some of the folks over there, the shops down there, and they're all of a rich ethnic diversity down there. And they love the colors. If you go down there and you look at the restaurants and the smoke shop and all the things down there, it's really an eclectic mix. Now, you can make an argument, if that was all over town, we'd have cardiac arrest. Even I would, because, I like beige. But down there, it kind of enhances that community down there. And that's what they're saying, and they love that new sign. So, I'm just trying to, I'm just sharing the feedback I got, and I'm trying to find out if there's some way that we can kind of, respect that cultural diversity, but at the same time not open, that first domino falling and everything else. So I don't know how to solve that. I'm just sharing the feedback from the community. That's all.
I like that. I mean, I have to say, we've done that other places, right? We've allowed different kinds of signs or different types of lights in different areas because it either attracts businesses or it makes it feel like a community. If there was an option to create some sort of different sign regulations for different communities that enhances that community, I would be okay with that. I'm just worried about having these kind of vibrant colors all over town. If there's a community feel,
But
like,
it would be a
know,
slippery slope. I mean, what do we say to the next guy who wants to do it? And how do we justify that it was okay for this shopping center, not some other strip shopping center?
And the other thing I would just add to that is that signs are not just for those who are there all day. I mean, our signage tries to be uniform and aesthetically pleasing for everyone who passes by and to have some uniformity across the town. So I'm not in favor of.
yeah, but we've already done it differently downtown. For instance, we've had,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
we
I'm
did
just,
that purposefully for a geographic area.
we could
with
do
a
the same, is
distinct-
all I'm saying. Maybe we could pick a few areas that were ethnically diverse, or I'm just saying that there's an opportunity.
I still think there are 4 no's, 1, 2, 3, 4. So no changes.
But thank you, Jack, for sharing that.
Just a clarification, there could be an important thing to make sure we do add that there would be no signage on artwork. So we might want to consider making it clear that not the issue about having it on a base of a sign, but just to make it clear that you can't have any signage on actual artwork.
Yeah, period.
Period. And we might have to, when we come back, add some language so that that's clear.
And just to be clear, most art is signed by the artist in some way, indicated, so a painting usually has a signature or something, and sculpture often has a little plaque somewhere near it, if nothing about, the public art we have on the grounds. So that's not my intention, is to say there cannot be some recognition of the artist. But I think we all understand that's not a sign, right? Okay.
Yeah, no, when I first read this, I thought the sign had to relate to the art.
Right.
Realizing that it doesn't, I mean, certainly, it's not acceptable.
Couldn't they have just put a ground sign out there on that corner? Monument sign?
They could put a ground sign up.
But instead, they chose to put a piece of art there that would look much better than a sign. But they'd still like to get their name out, and they'd like to do it in a unique way that everybody else seems to enjoy that's over there. So I do think we're being closed-minded on this one, because if I was the property owner and was told I had to redo my sign because the council didn't like it, I'd take the art and everything out and put a darn monument sign in the corner. That's what I'd do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to work with legal staff, because we did, as a staff, interpret the ordinance that you could have a piece, a sign on that, and we did issue a permit for that, albeit it had to be black. The sign had to be black. So we're going to have to talk with legal staff and just determine.
I feel like if we're wanting to encourage artwork throughout town,
Right.
what we're doing here does not do that.
Okay. So the last one is regarding flags and flagpoles.
Yeah, what do you think?
No.
No, okay. Everybody else?
Earlier, you said you liked flags. Did I miss?
Oh, flags we're talking about now?
Yeah, we moved to flags.
Flags I'm fine with.
Oh,
You
okay.
said that. I knew I was not out to look.
Excuse me.
He was still stuck on art.
I'm still thinking of Don's comment about liking to have art around town. It just seemed to be a little out of character.
Would you rather have a piece of art or a monument sign?
I know where you put it.
So we're on flags now. Everybody okay with flags?
Yes.
Reticence.
All right, we're good with that one.
Okay, and you don't want to add the option of the architectural building design standard to be able to have a flag on it?
Well, doesn't the building have to meet architectural building design
No.
standards anyway?
No. You can have an older building.
Oh, I see.
Oh, now I'd say
Okay,
yes
one
to that
was-
option. I would feel more comfortable with that option.
That only be allowed on these.
Yeah.
Tenant has to be 100,000 or more, and the building is at least 300 feet.
Yeah.
And it also has to meet the architectural building.
We got 4 yeses for that one.
Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing that back to our
Okay.
attention, because that could,
Okay?
All right, that's it.
That's it?
And then-
So I'm going to try to summarize, and once I'm finished summarize, we still have to do a consistency statement for our bees and our champion trees, but we're going to see this come back to us, summarizing everything we've said tonight, hopefully, and maybe more. What I heard was we agree with everything that was presented, except for no out parcels in shopping centers, no change in the neon signs, no public art with signage on supported base. No,
or on the artwork itself.
yeah, no change to the sign standards, and you're going to work with legal about the interpretation of the existing ordinance.
Yeah, about that one sign permit, yes.
Okay.
May I make a comment real fast?
Sure.
What I would really like, since we're making these, a number of changes, and we made a number of changes, some numbers, like 2 or 3 years ago as a result of the task force. I would really like, after some period of time, for staff to come back to us and show us what it's looking like, so we can see if these changes are good for our community once we get them in place, and just come back and look at it again.
Any other comments? We still need a motion for a comprehensive plan of consistency statement for bees and champion trees.
I'll give it a shot. I move that, let's see, I know you got an option A and B in here, but it doesn't read smooth in the case. Option 1 is, so I'll just say that the LDO amendment round 25 items B2 and C2 meets the consistency and reasonableness with our LDO. Do I need to read those section 1 and 2? I do not, do I see? Okay.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Discussion. I'm looking at our attorney. You're okay with that? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 6-1. Do we need a motion to table and ask staff to bring back the signs, or?
Can we just direct?
Ricky, when, do you think it can come back to the next meeting?
Yes.
Or?
So a motion to bring it back to the next meeting?
I think
Okay.
that would be.
Motion to bring
As
that remaining, let's see, round 26, item A, to our next meeting for consideration.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Barker.
sure.
We now move to committee reports. This is item G on our agenda. This item is potential amendments to the architectural design standards. There's a pending quasi-judicial matter that may involve issues similar to those addressed in this item. However, that quasi-judicial matter is not being considered now and should not be discussed. Rather, the council should focus on the general policy issues presented by this proposed amendment and its application townwide. Planning Development Committee Chair Mr. Frantz will explain the committee's recommendation, and we have Mr. Barker standing by to answer questions. Mr. Frantz.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we had a pretty decent discussion on this one at the Planning and Development Committee meeting. I think we actually had one of our longest meetings of quite some time.
43 minutes?
43 minutes. I mean, it was just a marathon. But anyways, at the end of the day, Council Member Adcock and I think we supported option 1, and Mr. Yerha went with option 3. We felt like it should come to the whole council for discussion anyway, because we knew you guys wanted to have fun too.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Barker, tell us what options 1, 2, and 3 are briefly. if you could.
Sure. This is the current standard in our appearance design manual, our community appearance manual, that brick, concrete, and stone should be left in their natural state to weather over time. So that would be option 3, just to leave it the same. Option 1 would allow, and we did the work with legal staff to kind of have more precise wording in here about option 1 that allows these materials to be painted as long as they're not high intensity or fluorescent pigments or colors and are not used and the paint color complements the colors on the site or buildings. So that would just allow that to occur as long as it got approved, the paint color. And then option 2 would be to only allow painting up to 2 sides of the building, and it would be those least visible sides that are not adjacent to sidewalks or public rights of ways, as long as, again, it was painted to color to match as reasonably as possible the natural color of the unpainted sides. So those are the options.
Okay. Any committee members want to speak to?
I'll be happy to start. The reason I supported option 1, first of all, I really appreciated the staff trying to find the Solomon answer to this question. And I'm not in favor of painting or covering up any building that's crumbling or in disrepair. However, for a building for which the owners are simply trying to improve its aesthetic, if you're going to allow 2 sides of the building to be painted, I see no reason not to allow 4 sides of the building to be painted, with the caveat that there would be standard colors, that they would have to be approved by the staff, et cetera. I totally get the sense of scale with, on the pedestrian sides and the car sides where the masonry allows you to have a sense of scale, and that's not true when the building faces another building or an alley. On the other hand, I'm just going with logic. If 2 sides are okay, 4 sides are okay as far as I'm concerned. And as I drive through downtown, which is not as much as Mr. Frantz, but still a lot, I see plenty of other painted brick buildings. And to tell you the truth, I had to actually make myself pay attention to them. They did not jump out at me and make me go, oh my Lord. So that was where I came down on it.
I shared Ms. Adcock's.
Mr. Yerha.
I'm getting tired, just like.
She's like, ditto.
Well, I went with number 3. I guess none of us went with option 2. I mean, the reason I didn't go for 2 is I just thought it was too confusing. We're already confusing people, I think, by some of this stuff, let alone making it more so. So that's why I didn't take 2. So it came down to 1 or 3, which means paint brick or don't paint brick. And here's my reasoning for picking don't paint brick. We're not starting this discussion from scratch. We already have an ordinance on the book that says don't paint brick. That's been discussed by council not too long ago, I don't think. And I'd like to use a football analogy. Mrs. Adcock always uses medical analogies.
How dare you impede?
But when there's a call on the field in football and it gets reviewed, a booth review, you need, the football word is indisputable evidence that the call should be overturned. Okay, I think indisputable may be a little too extreme for this case. So let's just say I think you need sufficient or significant evidence that it should be overturned. So the rule on the field is don't paint brick. I have not seen sufficient evidence since this was passed. Even though I wasn't here on the council to vote for it at the time, I would have voted for it. I just haven't seen sufficient evidence to change this. I mean, the ordinance is the ordinance. So that's why I went with supporting our current ordinance, which was option 3. Besides, I don't think it's good for the brick.
Other comments?
Well, I have to tell you, when I read this, I said, what a great job for the staff. It's so obvious, it has to be option 2. What else is there? And when I read the staff report and what you all went through, I said, somewhere I'm just on another planet. That's what I guess. So it is a tough one because we're dealing with, downtown, and we're dealing with, a lot of other things. And we have to stay focused strictly on this and not any other cases going on. And I didn't find, honestly, when I read it, I didn't find option 2 confusing. I was thinking, well, if we protect, what's like on the main street or on the street, and you have the back, I said, that would make sense. So if somebody, the one concern I had was if you're painting in the back to not do the repairs. That was the concern I had. But I said, well, that might make, there may be a reason and that might make sense. So I was coming here prepared thinking that that would be the dominant thought. So
Okay.
I'm here just listening.
So we've had option 1, 2, 3. I want to offer an option 4, just to make it really confusing.
Oh.
I think that there may be cases where painted brick makes sense. But for the most part, I don't want to see painted brick. So I would rather see a special use, which makes our life more miserable, but it would allow that option. And of course, that means more hearings. But that's the way I would like to tackle this. And I'm sure I won't get any support, but just throwing option 4 out there.
I think that's reasonable, but it doesn't address what my biggest concern is with the painted brick. And it's not the person who's actually painting the brick for the first time, because, oh, it looks so lovely when it's fresh. It's that it does peel, it looks bad. It's funny, because I went through downtown Cary and concluded option 3 was better, based on the blue building that's there. And you look at the blue building as you're heading west on
Kind of
West Chatham
gray
Street.
blue.
Yeah, gray blue, and there's 3 different shades of blue on the side of the building, because somebody painted it, and then somebody went and patch painted it, and then somebody went and patch painted it again, and it just looks bad. It's not well maintained, and I have concern based on what can happen with trapping moisture when you paint the brick. So I have reservations about that. Sometimes I feel like, our town looks great. Why do we keep messing with these different things? I mean, some of these sign ordinances have the same impression on me. It's like, we look great. People love coming here. People want to open their businesses here. Why are we changing some things that really seem to work well? And I think painted brick is one of those things. I would go with option 3.
Ms. Bush?
Well, I think it's interesting that we're talking about this, because one of the things we talk about almost all the time, especially Ms. Robinson, when you talk about, quality building, is so much of our building requirements require masonry. And we require masonry because bricks are built to last. That's the whole idea behind masonry. And it doesn't need painting. And I think if you're investing, at least in the beginning, as we're talking about it now, the reason we ask them to do it is because we don't want all that maintenance and we don't want the painted areas. I think brick doesn't need to be painted. However, we've also heard that there are times in the past where it can fall apart, where it could need painting, and we've seen many brick buildings where they need to be repaired, and you can see this nice chalk, caulk-filled line going through it. Yeah, I think that in that case it would look better. So I like option 4. Because I think there are times, and I live right next door to a beautiful painted house, brick house. And I remember it going up and thinking, oh, that's a beautiful brick color. And then the next day, they started picking it up. Why did they put very expensive brick and then paint it? And now they're painting it again. And yeah, it looks nice, but it isn't what I would have chosen. I think if we've already decided as a town that masonry is important to us, and the whole idea behind masonry is its permanence, why are we now saying, well, we didn't really mean that. It's masonry, but you can paint it. So I think option 4 for me works.
Okay.
I'm not against option 4, Mayor. I'd just like to hear how do you see a special use special use permit application going for painting a building?
So
how might that go?
So if you have some ugly-looking brick with damage and it's had repair, and maybe there was a section taken out, now you have a different color brick, and everything around you is painted, you might convince me that, yeah, it might look better if this was painted too.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Sure.
And that is that I don't think a special use is the appropriate thing.
Okay.
Painting brick is not a use. It may be that you need standards established for when it is appropriate to paint, as when there are severe cracks in the brick. Some objective standard might be something that staff could research and come back to you with standards that might be applicable.
The reason I said special use is because it has 7 criteria, 8 criteria, I can't remember.
But that's...
And so that would come into play, does it blend in with...
Well, that's what I said at P&D, was that painting doesn't seem to be a use. It doesn't change the use, it changes the appearance.
Okay.
Where you were trying to go with option 4 that I appreciate so much is case by case. It may not be right for this masonry building, it might be right for this one, and who decides? So that's the part of your attempt to find a middle ground that I appreciate.
So option 4 is no longer called special use. It's just
So-
language that would allow painting to be considered, that would come to council or not, since it's an appearance thing.
Well, I'd like staff to research it, but my recommendation would be that it would be just objective standards that staff could review rather than bringing it to council and making it a discretionary type decision.
The only issue with that is we would take all the hit for that, and staff would make the decisions. That'd be very difficult for us, because we have to hear it, and then we go, well, it wasn't our decision. Ms. Robinson?
May I make a motion just see
Sure.
if it flies? I'd like to make a motion for option 3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of motion to approve option 3? 1, 2, 3.
Whew.
We have 4.
All right.
And that would just
All opposed.
leave the standard
I'm
the
sorry.
same.
Leave the standard the same.
Mayor, would you like to see those who were opposed to that motion?
I think I know.
Yeah, no, but I still think you have to call for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Those opposed.
Just
Motion
procedure.
carries 4-3. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barker.
Thank you.
Old and new business. We're now at item H. We'll discuss the item pulled from the consent agenda, resolution supporting school systems grant proposal. Mr. Frantz, I believe we'll start with you, and Ms. High is available to answer questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'd sent an email to council and staff. It kind of just outlined my two concerns as far as why this gave me a little heartburn. One is I just don't think that one local government should be supporting or opposing the actions or requests, especially for a federal grant of another local area government. And then two, I've actually got concerns with the request that, yes, the funds may set up this nice new program that does all these wonderful things that we hope, but then where does the money come from to keep that program going year after year after year? And quite frankly, what benefit is Cary going to see out of this? So those are my concerns. I just don't think we should be taking a position or supporting a resolution. I think it's nice to get the information and know that this is the school system is requesting this, but I don't think we should be endorsing it.
And as usual, my concerns were process-related. It is required by the school system to ask municipalities under their where schools are under their jurisdiction to review it. But our approval of it, a resolution in support of it or against it has no bearing on their application. And it was my understanding this was brought to us rather than for discussion, but in the form it was because they didn't give us sufficient time to send it back to staff for resolution. And since it can do no harm to leave it alone, I would like to simply accept it for information and not take any action on it. And that would be a motion I would make.
Second.
There's a motion second. In the discussion, I would like to ask Ms. High to give us a little brief history of how this came about, because I think what they wanted was a letter from me. And instead of doing that, we decided to do a resolution.
Well, I think that was wise of you, Mayor, actually.
Yeah, they sent us a copy of the application and a summary for this $20 million grant to create personalized learning environments for kindergarten through second graders. And they brought it to us as a requirement of the grant application, like Mr. Frantz said, was that they had to share it and provide an opportunity, if council wished, to provide any kind of feedback, comments, or support. But no council action is required.
And
Does it, may I ask a question?
yes, please.
Does it improve their chances of getting the grant or hurt their chances of getting the grant if we provide it or not? I'm a bit confused. They didn't specifically say, they just, in the email request was if you'd like to support it, we would welcome that and include it with the application.
They did contact me today, and they were wondering about our feedback. Are we going to provide any feedback? And I said, actually, there's a resolution on the table tonight to be voted on.
But is it feedback? Thank you for sharing your information.
No, they wanted constructive criticism or support or...
Well, I have no criticism. They're doing their job.
Right.
And
That's right.
It's part of the grant process, the way I understand it, to get feedback from other local governments and
If there's any
and
to give,
support.
right.
And that's the way I view it, and it could be viewed totally wrong, but anything we're doing for our schools is a wonderful thing, especially when we're bringing federal dollars back to Wake County. I'm going to support this, I think.
Yeah, but you're bringing federal dollars back that are committing county dollars for perpetuity.
I can't control the county budget, but if I can bring federal dollars back here, I'll do it. So that's
But the motion on the table is to accept this
Motion on the
information, so you'd have to
table
vote that down and
Right,
vote up the
exactly.
resolution, just FYI.
And I'm actually a supporter of technology in the school, so, and what I do is build personal learning environments, so I'm actually supporting the resolution.
And I personally, not as a council member, but personally certainly support the program and the grant, no question about it. But I just don't see the need or what's to be gained by us as a group
Right. I agree. saying
yes or no to it. I mean, I think, so I support Gale's motion, even though personally I support the program and the grant that's being discussed.
Okay.
Nicely said.
Anyone else? Motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? No. Motion carries 5-2. That takes us to closed session. I would entertain a motion.
Got it. Pursuant to GS 143-318-11A3, I move that we hold a closed session to consult with our attorneys employed by and or retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town. Among other things, the council expects to receive advice concerning the following lawsuit: Panther Creek Raleigh LP and the Cary Park Associate LLC versus the Town of Cary and Wake County Board of Education, to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by GS 143-318.10E.
Second.
There's motion, second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in closed session. We'll reconvene our meeting, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
There's a motion, second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Today.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.